Hello, everybody. You are having a crisis. It's me, Crisis, live from New Zealand with your weekly poll show, or I should say my weekly poll show. I don't know how many that you've had, but I read over 50 new comic books this week, and I have a list of all the maybe the ones I didn't read, and we are going to go through them all. We're going to have an AMA. We're going to talk about many, many things, but first, we're going to talk about my picks of the week. So if you're here on time, I want to talk about the thing you're interested in, which is which comics did I love this week. So let's see. Each of the picks of the week is what I thought my pick would be going into the week, and then what my pick turned out to be, which we will talk about later over the course of the show. Here we go. My top pick of the week for DC heading into this week was Absolute Wonder Woman, because it is my dream team of Kelly Thompson with Mattea De Lewis on art, who is one of my favorite artists in the industry. Was this my DC pick of the week? By a hair, a nose. It was Absolute Martian Manhunter, which I have so much to say about today. In fact, I wrote a song about it. And if I'm feeling brave, the outro song today may be my original song, which I've only played one time all the way through, about Martian Manhunter. But we have so much more to talk about. My Marvel pick of the week was Ultimate Wolverine. Why? Because it had Ultimate Gambit and Ultimate Kitty Pryde. However, after reading, my Marvel pick of the week was Doom's Division #1. I might be the only person who that's the pick of the week of, but we'll talk about it later. For Image going into this week, my pick of the week was You'll Do Bad Things, written by Tyler Boss, who was the artist of that amazing Out of Alcatraz last week. However, after reading, my #2 pick of the week was Elevated #1, which is We're Taking Everyone Down With Us by Matt Rosenberg and team. And then indie, meaning not big three, my pick of the week was Patrick Horvath's Free For All, which I did love, but it turned out, and this is such a late entry that I don't even know that much about it because I was reading it literally as I was putting clothes on to be on the stream, is Reversal from Alex DeCampi, Kelly Fitzpatrick, Skylar Partridge, and Hassan Otsman Elal. Oh, you know what? I wrote down how to read his name phonetically, and did I remember to bring that up? No. Max has it in chat because I told Max I'm going to get his name right this week. But wait, before I greet everybody in the chat, we're not done yet. Oh no, because now we're going to talk about my top 12 comic series of the year so far. Spoilers for those of you who are regular viewers, there have been no adjustments this week because none of these series were in the reading this week, and nothing that was close to my top 12 got into the top 12. So let's count it down. 12 is Zatanna from Jamal Campbell. Oh, wrong direction. 11 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Jason Aaron. 10 is Absolute Superman by Jason Aaron and crew. I'm already losing count. 9 is Batman and Detective Comics from Tom Taylor and Mikhail Janin. 8 is Ghost Box by Mike Carey, Pablo and Romandi from Comixology. Then we have The Tin Can Society from Rick Remender's Giant Generator. That's by Peter Warren, Francisco Mobley, and Chris Chukri. Then we have The Ultimates, which everybody loves, from Dennis Camp, Juan Frigeri, and Federico Blee. Then we have The Power Fantasy from Kieran Gillen, Casper Wingard, and Clayton Cowles. We have Jed McKay's Avengers, pretty much only, as we all know, because Fareed Karami has been drawing it. So we'll see where that goes with the next issue. Then, of course, Batman Dark Patterns, which everybody on this stream is obsessed with. It is by Dan Waters and Hayden Sherman with Trina Farrell on colors. Then Nice House by the Sea, which I got to enthuse about to Omar this weekend while I was catching up with him. He loves it too. He actually loves the original one. He hasn't read this new one yet. And still at #1, FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles. Okay. Now, let me say hi to, oh my gosh, you're popping off in the chat. Okay. All right. Let's say hi to everyone popping off in the chat, and then we will get underway with a brief AMI. You know how I say I never know what the moment of crisis is going to be? I haven't even thought about it a little bit over the weekend. So maybe the chat will inspire me. Bunk Master B keeping up his perfect streak of being the #1 in the chat. Actually, maybe somebody was first before him last week. How perfectly timed to get to hang out with Peter as I'm waiting in line to meet Matthew Rosenberg, author of my Image pick of the week, and Tyler Boss, author of the book I thought I was going to be my Image pick of the week and my Indie pick of the week from last week. Wow. You are meeting some amazing creators today, Bunk. A fifth of Jack Gaming will have to leave Crisis a minute early, but that doesn't matter. I'm happy that you're here. I do know that on Your Mint Condition, the Epic reprint poll is launching in about 2 hours, which I've been a part of planning, but I'm not a part of administering that particular poll. So I know some people are going to head out for that towards the end of this. That's why I started this a little bit earlier this week. Let's see. But A Fifth of Jack Gaming actually is a book club that he hosts covering the first volume of IDW's TMT, which I love. Let's see who else said hello. Mall 360, Doll Parts 404 came out this week. A comic book that's a little too disturbing for me, but apparently Mall 360 into it. Hello, Mall 360. John Pauls is here, who caught our Evergreen stream last week. James Abel is here, who I've been corresponding with over the weekend. Penny Ma is here. Hey, all. It's been an epic week for live streams. That's true, and this is going to be another epic week. I am live streaming all but one day this week. I know it's going to go poorly for me, but that's just what the plan is. Javier Hernandez is here. He made it just in time. Says Murph saying hi to everyone and wishing us all a good Sunday. Kane is here. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday to everyone. My regular Super Job saying hello to everyone. And Seth Murph saying, calling it out early. Absolute Martian Manhunter was really good. Came in with low expectations, which usually helps, but it surprised me how much I enjoyed it. You know, we'll get into it when we get into it, but after feeling, I was not a great lover of Dennis Camp's assorted crisis events, despite the branding. So I was really unsure if I was going to like Martian Manhunter, and it just bowled me over. Omnibo, let's go! Because what is Aussieverse? Aussieverse is for life, ? Check out Omnibo's channel, Aussieverse. They do really good. If you like this, but you just want more crazy people all at once talking, and also with Australian accents, that's what Aussieverse is. And that's linked in the Friends of Crushing Crisis strip on my channel. Richard Fearing, hello, and hoping I did have a good weekend. Very relaxing. I got my reading started early, so I was not freaking out as much as I usually am. So this morning, even though I was still in a hurry, I was not in a hurry to read. Stoops, hello. I can't remember if I've said hello to you before, but I'm certainly saying hello to you for the first time today. Max Appleman, what up? Feel free to remind me how I'm supposed to pronounce that letter's name. Lance McNair is here. It's not a stream without Lance. And Cruel Angel, regret not getting Absolute Wonder Woman. Well, yeah, I just love the art, but we'll get into it. I think this is my friend who I'm allowed to call Cyril because I don't know the Cyrillic alphabet, but he said it actually pretty close to just saying Cyrillic Cyril, but I know it starts with K. Hello. And Renzo N is here. Taylor Made reading Absolute Wonder Woman as we speak. Don't let me distract you. The art is amazing. And Logan Wayne, who is there, of course, for our Wolverine Evergreen live stream last week. Okay. Oh, wait, there's more. More people kept talking by the time I scrolled down to there. Mikkel Wesleys is here. Good to see me. So many good books that it's hard to keep up. Yeah, this week was overwhelmingly good. Helen, welcome. I saw that you left me a comment on my post this week. Thank you so much. I don't know if I got to respond to your comment, but I absolutely read it, and I'm happy. I think this is the third stream in a row you have attended, Helen. Not that we're taking attendance. Moonin, good morning. Mink 0029. I just assume that I'm supposed to say 00, like 007. Look, I promise, if you watch that Wolverine Evergreen stream, I have this Wolverine maxi series called Wolverine the Best There Is, and it's my favorite Wolverine book. And I'm not telling you it's good. I'm telling you it's my favorite because everybody says this Wolverine story is going to be transgressive and awesome, and it's going to be subversive and bloody. And then they never live up to that hype for me. That book was the only Wolverine book I've ever read where I was like, yeah, this is as weird and as bloody and it makes me feel weird inside. That's been promised to me from every Wolverine book, and that's why I recommend it. Maybe that makes it the best. I don't know. I don't think on quality it's best, although I do love Jan Jose Rip's artwork. Kenneth Crayley is here. Loved most of the books this week, especially DC Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman. You know, were you upset that we're changing the status quo that quickly in Superman, Kenneth? I kind of just liked where we were, and I know comic books is about change and shaking things up, but I was like, oh, we going back again, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And One Wheelchair X is here. I'm a half hour earlier, so perhaps earlier and easier for him to watch in the UK. And finally, just Mink is fine. Sorry, Edwin. We'll get back to your moment in the spotlight. I don't have to say 0029 every time, which is hard to say, but we know my tongue gets twisted by just about everything on the show. And Edwin Billiot is here. Greetings from New Orleans. And you're here for a few weeks. Wonderful. And it's always great to see your face. And but wait, there's one more person I don't think I've ever said hello to before. It's Spike Stonehand. Does my ranking algorithm take a number of issues into account? Yes, it does, my friend. Maybe one day, if you all want to be math nerds with me, I can get into it. But it ranks it assumes everything will get to 6 issues in a year. So a 6-issue series, like a lot of indie books, like image books, will only ship 6 issues in a year. So I kind of assume that was the standard. A lot of miniseries are 6 issues. So 6 issues is not weighted. Less than 6 issues, the score gets downrated based on not having enough issues yet. More than 6 issues up to 12, it gets a slight push because then it's really hard to release 12 perfect issues. Like I know that if I read 12 issues of stories I really love, that there's 1 or 2 that I'm kind of going to be like, about. And so up to 12, the rating gets slightly stronger. And then from 12 on, if you're Amazing Spider-Man and you ship 24 issues a year, you don't get any points for that. So that is how the rating works. But it's a whole thing. It's a whole algorithm because I love that stuff. Okay. Now we're getting into AMA, you cheaters. This is supposed to be Moment of Krisis. That's okay. I'm just having fun. And Edu Lorena, hey Peter, which omnibus announcement has me excited? I mean, I'm very hyped for X Factor Volume 2. Wasn't there just one that I went crazy for? I can't even remember now. It wasn't X Factor 2. I can't remember. You know what? I have the list. We'll look later because I have the list. But there's one that I was like, yes, finally, it's here. And it's just, it wouldn't be X-Men because we have everything X-Men. Might have been X Factor 2, but I don't know. Whatever one we've been waiting for a really long time. I'll look at the list later. Okay. Oh, it's Alpha Flight 2. Thank you, Cruel Angel, for knowing my mind better than I do. It is absolutely the Alpha Flight by Bill Mantello and Jim Lee. Absolutely. Badger Stump, benefiting from British summertime. Yeah, my time changes next Saturday, so I don't even know what time the show is going to be because for me, it's my spring forward. I'm below the equator, so it's going to get earlier for me while it's still as late for you. So I get farther apart from you, which can be very, very tricky. Also, there was a Captain Marvel #2 stealth announcement, but not until next June. They're really delaying it. I'm all over the DC Finest announcements. My DC Finest spreadsheet is totally updated that I co-manage with Joey Hines. I'll put the link to it in the chat. Everybody can see it since it's for me. Oh, that might break into 2 parts. Oh yeah, that's not going to work because it broke into 2 parts. So I can't fix it now. Delete comment. I can put me in a timeout. Anyway, but yeah, I love DC Finest. And I'm really excited for all the new announcements. And then finally, yeah, the Nom was previously the one I was the most excited about. Now we're into new announcements that take us through January. Okay. We gotta take a pause. James has got my back in the DC Finest. James knows every link to everything that's ever been on the internet. Okay. Oh no, I didn't decide on what to do for Crisis. What's one I haven't really talked about yet? I don't know if I'm really hype about anything this week or in my feels about anything this week. I guess my Moment of Krisis is going to be about comics that reflect the current world and how much you could get away with reflecting the current world, right? So comics are made with like a lead time. Of course, it takes many artists over a month to draw a 20-issue page, but some of them who can get it done in a month. But then you have to think there's the writer who writes it. Some writers can bash out a script in like 2 days. That's amazing. I don't know how. But so then that was 2 days. Then the artist, let's say it's the fastest artist, and they can do a page a day. So that was 22 days. But then we need the colorist who might have a flatter. And then after that, it's got the letterer. Then it's got to go to print and all that. And it needs cover art, but we had that 3 months ahead so we could solicit it. My point being is that it's really hard to do very current commentary in a comic book. They're always going to be at a little bit of a lag, but not as much as a lag as a TV series or a movie, right? They all kind of occupy the spectrum. It's not the nightly news. It's not a podcast. It lives somewhere in the middle. Probably a comic book can get through production to us faster than a TV series, unless it is a reality series. But I think that's always interesting because a lot of times if something very specific happens in pop culture, I mean, just think about something silly. Think about Left Shark behind Katy Perry at the Super Bowl, however many years ago that was, right? Like meme culture on the internet is on top of that in a minute. Like the memes are up to 8th generation memes overnight. You know, we're at like the great grandchild meme referencing the original meme in an ironic way within 48 hours. But then a comic book that's going to reference that is not going to get to do that for like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And it's not even going to get to meme it that hard because, it's not going to know about all the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation memes. It's only going to know the original meme if they kind of like put it into the comic right away. But there were a few comics this week that actually had some really, really recent stuff. And it's interesting because for me, I don't always love when comics do that. Like, comics clearly aren't happening in the real world, because if they were, superheroes would be doing some things about some things. But I do like comics that comment on the real world, but sometimes it gets like a little too winky for me, and it takes me out of the fantasy life of the comic book. But there was one this week, and it was because I chose to read Savage Dragon, which I usually don't read, but I read it this week, and we'll get into why later, that had a moment that was it happened in January. I think it happened on like January 20th or 21st. And so this comic book came out on March 26th, but that's a comic that Eric Larson writes and draws himself. So we're only have to wait for it to get coloring and lettering, and it's indie. So it comes out a pretty fast schedule. But I just found myself going like, wow, that is really great commentary. But I think this whole thing comes around and gets interesting when something in the real world happens that the comic book didn't want to be commenting on. And then there's this rush to erase it. Like, if, sometimes when there, say, is an assassination attempt on a political figure somewhere, if a comic book had something that has an assassination attempt with a political figure and the comic is like scheduled to come out the week after that happens, then there's all this fretting. Like, should we take it out? Should we not publish the issue? Should we just hold the issue? And the thing that I always think about with that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The third season was, I was about the same age of those characters, and the final few episodes of the season had to do, there was a school shooter in one of them, and then in the end of the season they are put a bomb in the library to blow up the school, spoilers, because of the mayor having this graduation speech there. And that was going to come out the week after Columbine happened, which one of the elements of that what involved explosives in a library. And so Buffy actually like held the finale for several weeks, I think into the summer from what I recall, and they reshot it, and you could tell they had them all back, and like some of them had like sunburns because they had clearly been called back from their vacation. So it's just, I always think it's really interesting, the conversation between fiction and reality. Sometimes it's intentional, as it was in Savage Dragon this week, which got some really good laughs out of me actually, and sometimes it's unintentional, as it was with that Buffy show, way back in 1999. And then you have to kind of decide how much do you want your thing to have aligned with reality? Like, sometimes these ideas are in the collective unconscious, sometimes the world is tilting in that direction, and sometimes it's just coincidence. So that's a moment of crisis today. This is what happens. I don't have a plan. I always tell you, don't have a plan. This was clearly unscripted, and that's what I am here for. So now we are going to get into a little bit of an AMA, but it doesn't have to be super long. It does, but once I get started on talking about the comic books, I'm not going to stop for like questions that are not super related to the comics that often. I'm going to make 2 breaks today, one or after the G's and one around the S's. And then of course we'll talk at the end. So here's your chance to get any burning questions off of your chest. Let's see what people are talking about. Oh, not too much. Kane says it's the second best part of the stream. The first best is always my music at the end of the stream. Well, there's a new one today, if I have the bravery to play it, Kane. Foxhound saying that actually what they really want from these Omni announcements isn't Marvel, it's DC, Birds of Prey by Simone, but also X-Men Age of Krakoa, Dawn of X. Well, tomorrow in Near Mint Condition, I'm recapping all of the omnibus announcements from Marvel from July to January, and then on Tuesday on Near Mint Condition, we're going to go over live the DC catalog. So I was thinking about doing them as secret streams on this channel, but then Omar very, very graciously invited me to do it on his channel. So that will be happening the next 2 days. You just are not going to be able to escape me today. Do I have the Buffy DVDs because the HD version is so terrible? Yeah, I have all the original DVDs. I mean, I got them as they came out. I have the original set that are like the big thick ones, not with the little plastic cases in them. I haven't watched them for a while. Kid Crisis is like really interested in watching it. There's a lot of 90s sexual politics in there, and Joss Whedon sexual politics. So I don't know about that, but I don't want to shield her from the world. It's just the world is so different now than it was in the 90s. That was a long, long time ago. If I was an intervention to help Namor, what is a nice thing? This question from Charles Balls is hilarious. If I was in an intervention to help Namor, what is a nice thing I would say to him? I would say those wings make your ankles look so thin. Kane says, oh yeah, games have to make an almost instant change due to the world-changing events. Siphon Filter and Spider-Man had to change due to 9/11. Yeah, a lot of comic books. I mean, comic books have had things crash into the World Trade Center many times. It happened in X-Force number 4 in 1991, early 1992. So, sometimes things are lining up with real life. Logan Wayne says, I heard a few people talk about this in regards to One World Under Doom and taking out Nazi or MAGA analogs. Takes them out of the comic. It doesn't make sense for the heroes to be dealing with that. Yeah, One World Under Doom is an interesting one because clearly all of it was scripted in large part, I have to think, before the election, because RB Silva, I think, is doing the whole series, so he needed some lead time. You could kind of predict some things about the world, but it's not like Ryan North is writing these things a week or two ago. Like, he really had to get these scripts in a while ago, I think, for it to be in production for a big event at Marvel with tie-ins that everybody's got to coordinate. And yeah, there's definitely some stuff. But that's one of those things of, is it a coincidence, or is Ryan North just tapped into the direction that the world is tilting? What did I think about a new volume of FF with Ramos and Artis? I'm not a big Ramos fan. However, I do think he sometimes is good when he shows a little bit of restraint. I loved him on Strange Academy, but that is very specifically when he is colored by Edgar Delgado. I just don't know about him in Fantastic Four. I don't think he's going to draw the team in a way that's going to look good to me. And that's a me thing. Like, I will say that I don't like it and it's bad, but I'm not going to like it for me. And I'm not pre-deciding that. I'm just saying, based on experience, I've only ever really liked him drawing Strange Academy. I just don't like how distended his figure work is. It doesn't appeal to me at all. And especially for FF, I just know it's going to bother me. I'm even looking at the cover, it already bothers me. Why do I have such a deep love for Alpha Flight? I love all of the sideline teams, all the underdogs, all the losers. I like a team title that just isn't interrupted by nonsense. Like Alpha Flight, it has one crossover issue with Avengers all the way until like the 90s or early 100s when it gets pulled into Infinity War and then Infinity Crusade. So it's just a book that's allowed to develop. And we don't really see that often in team books at Marvel and DC. Even, I mean, Marvel, every X book gets pulled into something sometimes. Avengers tends to get, at points in the 80s, Avengers doesn't get pulled into a lot of other stuff because there wasn't other stuff to get pulled into. And that's when I really love the Avengers. At DC, of course, Justice League winds up driving the whole line, but then sometimes you get a side book like Secret Six or even early Suicide Squad. So I like that. I like a team book that can just happen. And I like that it's like mutant adjacent. I like that they're like, what a weird team of misfits. If you pick up an Alpha Flight issue like in the mid 70s, what is it even about? Like, who is that team? So that's my answer to that. Devoida, who I don't think I've said hello to yet today, I was working on the Coup album with a cover showing the World Trade Center buildings being blown up and finished it right before 9/11. Wow. Boots Riley refused to change the cover. Wow. Spike Stonehand, as someone who reads a lot, do you have a preference for how tight the continuity is between books and lines or publishers as a whole? So here's the thing, Spike. I am obsessed with really tight continuity. It's my biggest turn on. I am a horror for shared universes. So I do like it, but sometimes if it gets too tight, I get I don't have a perfect memory to begin with. And then with all of the comics I read, my memory is all externalized. I put it all in my spreadsheet. So if a comic expects you to have totally memorized the contents of a comic that came out last week that wasn't even the issue before that of that comic, this is totally predicated on the events on the Babelbook #2, which came out last week. That sometimes throws me for a loop. I appreciate it. Especially the Krakoa run of comics at the end of Krakoa for Fall of House of X, where you could really read sequentially every week for 6 months and they all perfectly lined up. But we knew that was all one line. That was the X-Men line. And so I appreciated that. But when DC does that and they're like, oh, based on events that happened in Batman last week, part of me is so fascinated with the editorial power it takes to do that. And then part of me is like, oh boy, I don't remember necessarily, but I do love it. My two preferences are either a line that is that internally consistent to itself, because if they don't care about the continuity, why should we? To a degree, I'll put books in reading order the best that I can. Miles Morales is in so many books now, but you can kind of figure it out based on when he's a vampire or not. But then if it's clear that the comic publisher just doesn't care, which DC doesn't care about Batman. They just don't care. I don't believe there's anybody in the Bat office who knows what order these books actually go in. Then I'm not going to get too wound up about it. But I also love an indie series that knows how to put its things in order and keep it in order within its own continuity, like Saga or Power Fantasy, right? How Power Fantasy has all of these flashback years and you can put it in order and it reads perfectly if you read it in order of the years or if you read it in order of the pages. I love that too. does Kid Crisis have an American accent or New Zealand? She's never picked up a New Zealand accent, and she's around Kiwis all the time in school. She can't even fake do it. I do think she has certain vowels. I think some of my vowels have gotten weird. People never thought I sounded like I was from Philadelphia, even in Philadelphia. They often asked if I was Canadian. Maybe that's why I like Alpha Flight. But I do think my accent has gotten a little strange since I've been here, but I don't think I have any kind of a New Zealand accent. Thank you for this Conan Comics reading order. Definitive is spelled. I have to go fix the spelling of the word definitive there. Okay. Richard Fearing with a good reminder to hit the like button. It does help. It helps. YouTube's algorithm notices how much. So everybody, let's take a breath. Let's breathe. Let's take our pointer finger. Let's put it on the mouse or touchscreen and let's click the like button. And then if you don't want to miss the show when it changes time slightly, you should also click the notification bell because I'm telling you next week, I don't know what time the show is going to be yet. Okay. I think I'm just going to say hello to Hank real quick. So I haven't really talked with him too much. Sad not to be able to catch all the stream live. That's okay. I know this is a long time to talk. I know it's a long time to talk. So if you catch it all throughout the week, that is cool for me. Logan Wayne, how would I sell Cyclops to somebody who doesn't like him? I don't know, because I don't like him. I'm from the era where he left his wife for Jean and then was also just a bad dad. So I don't understand why people from the 90s liked Cyclops. It took me coming back to comics and then 10 years, pretty much until we got to Krakoa and I saw the after effects of what Bendis did with him as Revolutionary Cyclops, which I didn't love at the time, although I had been coming around to him. But by the time we saw how that resulted and how he acted in Krakoa, then I came around to him. I guess what I would say to people is imagine a type A, straight A, perfectionist student in a world where there is no perfection and you're going to get everything wrong. And in fact, the more he tries to get it right and be a good partner, husband, father, soldier, son, sometimes it just feels like it gets more and more wrong. And you're going to read this decades-long arc where he doesn't really become his true self until he accepts that he's got to let a little bit of the chaos in. That's my pitch for Cyclops. And good evening to Novarg. Now that I've seen Novarg's profile picture, we can begin. Okay, let me get my PDF going. And actually, while we're doing that, let me put up the banner for, if you've never been to my website, crushingcrisis.com. That's cool because I know some of you just hang out with me on YouTube, and I very much appreciate you hanging out with me on YouTube. Crushing Crisis, though, if you like me talking about my thoughts here, I talk about my thoughts about comics there too. I preview all of the new releases every week and explain where you could start each series, which I just don't have enough time to do here. I've wanted to do it here, but there's only so many notes I can read and encounter and keep track of while I'm also doing all of the production and talking to you and having my thoughts. Sometimes I don't even remember what happened in the comics and I'm like, oh boy, there's a lot. So if you want to see me really deep dive into what's happened in previous issues, where it's placed in the run, where it's going to be collected, where, that's all in Crushing Crisis every week for Marvel, for DC, and for Image. And actually, let me see if I can actually do this. It's a lot of moving parts here. I just wanted to show you the 2 new guides that I've made that I haven't even announced to Patreon because I've been so busy. I haven't even sent a message to Patreon. I talk about not wanting to abuse the notification bell. I really, really get nervous about sending Patreon too many messages. But let me just make this bigger. Oh, not the screen. Nope, wrong screen. So I launched 2 guides in the past couple weeks, just little ones, little quick ones. So this one is a guide to Rick Remender's Giant Generator, because we've all just been talking about how much we really love some of these new books. And so I did some research and I discovered that Giant Generator kind of breaks out into waves. And so wave 0, Rick Remender has retroactively kind of put all of his old creator-owned books into that wave, like Deadly Class, Black Science, Low, 7 to Eternity, Strange Girl, Fear Agent, and Tokyo Ghost. And he said that in the back matter. So I cover all of those. And then wave 1, which was Death or Glory, Scumbag, Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, and Holy Roller, all of which have wrapped up. And then wave 2, which are the books that we've been reading, including The Sacrificers, Tin Can Society, which we all love, Dust to Dust, which I love, The Seasons. All of these books are really kind of present in the conversation right now. And then he teased a wave 3. I wish I had the image ready, but I won't be able to bring it up fast enough. But there's going to be a Steve Epting book, a Daniel Acuna book, an Andre Lima Arajo book, a Greg Tocchini book, and a Yannick Paquette book. So this covers all those books And it has how they've been collected, which are some of those Wave O titles, gets really complex. So that's available to patrons. That'll be public before long. And I also did a guide to the Energon universe. And here's the thing. I went to a couple different places online and looked at their guides because I never want to do a guide if it's just going to be the same thing somebody else has done. That nobody's doing it right. And I'm sorry if you're my colleagues in guides, I'm sure you had your reasons, but they're basically just saying, here's the books that came out, which I do a little bit more than that. I suggest a reading order based on some of the developments in the books, but I still take it a trade at a time. But I also just give some context on like what the release strategy was and how they're being collected and how they were released interspersed with each other, which I just haven't really seen another guide do. So they aren't even linked anywhere on the site other than from my new releases posts, which are on the homepage. But probably later today or tomorrow, they will go up in a post to Patreon. So on the main page, when you go to a guide, or a post such as this one, and you look at all of the books, if there's a guide for that book, like, let me see, there must be a Spawn universe one here somewhere, then it will link to that guide. Oh, I didn't actually put the link in. Well, my life is very busy. What can I say? But that should be linked, and that should be linked, and I missed linking them when I wrote the post. Oops. Okay, but now let's get to the books. Right at the 30-minute mark, as it should be. So as a reminder, I'm probably not going to see your comments until we get to the end of the G's. And also as a reminder, if you've never seen this before, I have 1 minute to talk about each issue, although sometimes I violate that, and such is my right as the host here. But I really do try to keep within the minute. Okay, let me get my credits up. Here we go. We're starting with one of my favorite books of the week, Absolute Martian Manhunter, written by Dennis Camp, art by Javier Rodriguez, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. And yeah, this is an amazing comic book. The thing I loved about it, it's very much not in the style of the other Absolute Universe books. It's much more impressionistic, but it's really interesting. It has this character who is recognizably Martian Manhunter in his human guise, but he's maybe not accepting that he is Martian Manhunter. And so he is in part of I think the FBI, and something happens where he gets injured, but the injury has kind of like shaken loose this radical, psychedelic, colorful way he's seeing the world. And it's making him realize he's not everything he thought he was, which I thought was such an interesting, because it could be anything you're in the closet about, not, whether that's sexuality, whether that's addiction, whether that's just liking comic books. It's like anything that is true inside of you and you haven't figured out how to externalize. It's very much that, but it was absolutely psychedelic. It just drew me along page by page, had some really like thoughtful things that really threw me off as I read them and made me stop and think. And he's got this great thing where he breathes in everybody's thoughts as like colors. And that really, really stuck with me as I was reading. And I just kept thinking about it after I read too. And so I wrote the song, which maybe is going to be the song I play at the end. And it starts out with, oh, no, I'm not. I breathe your thoughts in like smoke, and they cloud my mind. I feel like I might explode in this coffee shop this morning. Which, if you read the issue, is very much things torn from the issue. So maybe if we get to the end of the stream and I'm feeling brave, I will debut that whole song at the end of the stream. Then we come to Absolute Wonder Woman. This is by one of my favorite collaborations in comics, which is Kelly Thompson with artist Matea de Luis. And here's the thing. I went on this guy's Instagram and I was looking at his flats because he shows a lot of process on Instagram. I definitely advise you to check it out. And his line art alone is amazing. It's not just that he does this heavy color rendering and makes everything look so photorealistic. I've seen people say, it looks like it could be done by AI. No, that's nonsense. AI is not as detail perfect as this. AI doesn't deal with motivated lighting in this way. What you're trying to say is this looks photorealistic. And I personally like comics that are photorealistic. So this is really exciting to me to see this. I know it's not for everybody, but I like it because it's not the characters still act and move. And the thing that I loved about this issue, you can pick it up even if you haven't been reading Absolute Wonder Woman. In fact, I would advise you just pick it up even if you haven't been reading Absolute Wonder Woman, because it's about her stepping away from man's world and back into the world of mythology and kind of giving some stories around some of the myth that is around her and the artifacts that she uses. I hugely enjoyed it. I mean, both this and Absolute Martian Manhunter were 5 for 5 perfect comic books for me. Absolutely blew my mind. And I read my pull alphabetically, so they were the first 2 books of the pull, and I was like, well, it's all downhill from here. Nothing's gonna be this good after this. And there were a couple good issues a little bit deeper in the pull, but nothing quite got me back to the level of these 2 this week. Okay, let's now go to the Amazing Spider-Not. What a stupid way to end your Amazing Spider-Man volume. Spider-Man's only juggernaut, like, for this to be a Deus Ex Machina. Literally, he's a god machine. So let's just change the title on the cover. Whatever. I sincerely disliked this issue. It just really didn't pay off anything that I wanted paid off from this run. We got this very intricate, interesting happening that was going to be like Spider-Man using magic, Spider-Man feeling that he bears the responsibility really for the entire world. And it really just turned into like a very silly juggernaut punch 'em up. And I don't love Ed McGuinness, actually, which I know is a controversial statement. I like how he draws characters in masks. So like Doom, I like his Spider-Man, but ultimately I liked his Juggernaut, but I don't really like his people all that much. Their faces just are weird to me. And there just was after all this buildup, like 10 issues and all those death issues, it didn't feel like anything got paid off. Like it turned out to be kind of just this Sidorak story that was maybe going to happen. Anyway, I don't know. It just wasn't really interesting. What was more interesting to me was that there was a backup story, and this backup story was kind of teased to be maybe a little bit more in the tone of what Joe Kelly's new run is going to be. And this was art by Cafu, who I love, who colors themselves. Oh, no, Frank Dermott colored here. Is the same person who colored Cafu on Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man. And this, I mean, it was a very standard Spider-Man stops some bank robbers story, but it just was funny. It looked good. The suit looked great. Notice how the reflection is not just on any one panel of the suit. It crosses panels because that's how it works. The suit is made of fabric, artists. And I really loved it. And it gave me some hope for Joe Kelly's run. Look, Joe Kelly, they basically asked him if he would do a fill-in arc after Zeb Wells. He said yes. And then they were like, well, would you want to keep writing Spider-Man? He's like, heck yes, I would write the Spider-Man ongoing. I read that somewhere. Maybe it was in the end note of this. So this 10 issues kind of, I get the feeling there are things that he wanted to do that maybe he like tucked in his pocket to save for that ongoing run. And this kind of just became filler. It's so weird to have the last 10 issues of a run by the artist who's about to take over the run. But anyway, I didn't like this issue. Ultimately, as much as I loved how this 8 Deaths of Spider-Man thing began, I just don't know if I could wholeheartedly recommend the whole thing because it kind of just cratered. I didn't read Amorini Amateur Cupid. It seems like Pat Shand put out all of the cheeky sex comics this week because there's quite a few in the list. I haven't been able to find any of them digitally because I think they only sell digital through his Kickstarters. There's 1 or 2 that look really interesting to me that I do want to read. There was that one, Wayward something. It was in the W's. But I haven't figured out how to get them yet. So that hasn't happened. Next is Astonishing Avengers. And I'm actually going to try to do all 3 of Marvel's Astonishing. These are their digital only. They're digital only titles. I'm going to try to do them all in one go. We'll see how I do. So this was Astonishing Avengers, kicking off a new story from Steve Orlando and Francesco Archidiacono with colors from Carlos Lopez and letters from Travis Lanham. And this comic is just so vague. Steve Orlando is trying to do like a downtime baseball game type of X-Men comic, which I know he loves because I know he loves X-Men. I just don't know if it works for the Avengers because they're not a team as family as well as the X-Men. Of course, he picked some Avengers it worked for, like She-Hulk with Hercules. That part worked. But other combinations of Avengers did not work as well for me. But I do like that it's using Night Thrasher and Shang-Chi. And then we come to Astonishing Spider-Man by Scott Aukerman with art from Julian Shaw, colors from CC De La Cruz, who needs to take my note about the shininess of the costume, and letters by Joe Sabino. This was fine. Actually, I really liked it. It developed in an interesting direction. It made good use of the vertical scroll, and it was a very standard Spider-Man versus, mob, drug, bad guys kind of thing, but it has this really interesting aspect of crime lord kind of claiming that he can influence Spider-Man's out of costume life and Spider-Man doesn't know if it's a bluff or not. That's what I want from the digital comic. Do something interesting that pulls me week to week. And then we have Astonishing X-Men, which I just am not that excited about, honestly. It's this story for, I put the credits in here. Oops, Alex Packnendall and Philip Sevy. It's got Husk kind of bumming around in Ireland near Casti Keep. It's got Skin doing construction work, which he's getting beat up for doing, and it doesn't even pay enough. And meanwhile, people are hating on mutants. I mean, talk about something that's ripped from the real world. This is very much like a immigrants are taking our job plot, except for with mutants. But I can't get that excited about these Alex Packnendall issues, especially when Tim Seeley's arc that came before this was so amazing. Now we come to a book that gets its own 60 seconds because this book is a full-length book, even though it's digital, which is Avengers Academy. And I will say it's just so much jumping around in time right now. I love this book. I love this cast. I think Anthony Oliveira is delivering one of Marvel's best books week after week, and it happens to be digital. And I really think Pablo Collar did a great job on art. KJ Diaz on color really keeps it consistent. Letters by Joe Caramagna, and there were some good vertical scroll gags here, like this person jumping off of this roof that he's being pursued by, and then as we scroll, we see his body continuing to fall down in front of this waterfall. Really great thing. I just feel like you got to be careful in a regular ongoing comic to take us too far away from the thing the comic's about. Like if you start focusing on the side characters and then we have 5 issues about the side characters, it starts to be like, okay, well, I'm not, where's Spider-Man, right? Unless you promised, this whole book's going to be about Spider-Man's supporting cast. I feel like this, by splitting up the Avengers into these 2s and 3s and pushing them all through time, it is right on the verge of annoying me that we aren't focusing on the thing that I came to this book to read. But at the same time, it's weekly. So like, I know they're coming out fast, and having 3 weeks in a row of some background focus when it's clearly all going to come together in this like big time thing that's going to be happening soon, I have patience for it. I still think you should absolutely pick this up. I think it's a fantastic comic. As a single issue, I wasn't as excited this week as I have been in the past. I'm not reading Exa Classics, which as far as I know is a reprint of comics from the 70s. I've not been able to find a digital version of Badger, Mad Monkey, Shock and Roll, although after reading another Mike Baron book this week, which we'll get to, I don't know if I'm as excited to read this one, although I just like silly heroes in indie. I like indie comics versions of superheroes. So that's why I'm tempted by this. And plus, like I'll give anything a chance. Like I know some of you were like, one of you mentioned the Rippaverse, which I didn't even know it was. I was like, Kelly Ripa from Regis and Kelly has comic books? That's how out of touch I am. And you were like, but you're not going to cover Rippaverse books too, will you? I'm like, yeah, I will. I'm not going to not cover a comic book just because I know that the creators are people I disagree with. I really try to hold apart the creators and the art, unless I'm really like endorsing something that's going to send money directly to a hate campaign, which maybe I would be. I don't know, because I haven't been able to find any of those Rippaverse books digitally yet. But anyway, this is not a Rippaverse book. I'm just giving you context on, I really will try everything, especially if you tell me I should check it out. I will check it out. Okay. Oh boy. Now we come to Batman Too Hush, Too Furious. In Batman 158, it's the sequel to Hush, except for there's already been sequels to Hush, like The Heart of Hush. But this sequel has the whole original gang back together. Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee, Scott Williams, Alex Sinclair, and on letters, who's on letters? Because I hated them so much. Richard Starkings. Yeah, so it's the whole original team. This whole original team should have just went to Bermuda or something. This comic was terrible. This was so bad. And it wasn't just so bad because it's trying to recreate the magic of Hush, which was a very specific and temporary magic. It's bad because this whole team doesn't feel like they're working in the present idiom. Just this colors. I don't usually like Alex Sinclair's colors. The colors are horrible. The shading on Batgirl right here makes her look like she has stubble. Like it's this very early 2000s kind of shading. And the thing about Jim Lee's art is it's so big and dynamic. It can take any kind of shading. You could do a flats only shading. You could do hyper shiny colors, but this particular color style is out of style. It's not of this moment. Jeff Loeb, who's doing really great, reading some other books right now, including Batman Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. This story makes no sense. Like Joker is captured, but then it's not really the Joker. Hush put him up to it because Hush is back. It just was horrible. Everything about it was horrible. The writing was horrible. Jim Lee's art, of course, has lost a step. We're not going to criticize him too much for that. He's a master of the medium and a legend. But like I feel like you could have gotten, if you're really going to do a Hush sequel, get Jim Lee to just do the covers and get like Jason Fabok or Phil Jimenez or get one of these people that's a modern Jim Lee who draws Absolute Superman, Rafa Sandoval. Get one of them to do it. who can, and get a modern colorist like Ulysses, or get the whole Absolute Superman team on this book. Yeah, and I wanted the letters. I hated the letters so much. I guess we're gonna zoom in, which is always dangerous because I never know if I can get it back to how it was. But these letters behind the narration, they're like, I can't get there. They're like textured. It's got this like wavy, staticky, watery texture. You can't do that on a letterbox that small because it makes it unreadable. You don't want patterning behind the letters. It's such a rookie mistake that I would think Richard Starkings, who like invented a lot of this medium of lettering that we are appreciating, would know better. I just think it was an absolute catastrophe. How much more could I explain how catastrophically bad I thought it was? So yeah, I thought it was horrible. Now we come to Batman the Long Halloween. Batman the Long Halloween, the last Halloween, issue number, I heard they not put the issue. Oh, there it is. Issue number 6. This is by Jeff Loeb, and it's got a rotating crew of artists on it. They're kind of doing Tim Sale-esque art, but they're not trying to imitate Tim Sale. This one by Enrico Marini. This particular issue did something that really took me out of it, even though I'm still really enjoying this series and would definitely recommend it. It's like a Batman year 2.5 story, wherever we would put, oh, I got hair on my face, wherever we would put the origin of Robin and the early Robin stories, because this probably comes right after that Batman and Robin year 1 right now by Mark Waid and Chris Samney. It does this thing where it explicitly reminds us of the modern day because it has Amanda Waller show up and they have like an argument with Amanda Waller, and then she's like mean to them, and she's just with the FBI or something at that point, and she goes away and they're like, she's going to be trouble one day. Like, I don't read these Jeff Loeb throwback retro comics for the like wink, that's not why I'm reading them. The case is interesting. The mystery is interesting. The whole like Robin just getting to know and meet Catwoman dynamic is interesting. Enrico Marini's art is great. This page looks amazing. It just, I got a little bit taken out that we spent so much time on this like whole Waller thing. And then they also played the disappearing Batman gag, like how he disappears off the roof with Commissioner Gordon all the time, but he just disappears from the middle of the street right next to, I think it was Robin and Commissioner Gordon, which Batman wouldn't do that. It didn't make any sense. There were just like so many little moments and gags in this issue that made me feel like they were like winking and they were a joke. And I was like, that's not what I'm here for. That's not what this book is. Okay. I don't read or even usually highlight battle action. I'm not a big war comic fan, but I wanted to point this one out because Trun Grunbach, friend of Near Mint Condition, actually did this cover. This is her painting. She's a fine art painter, and you can see that on her Instagram. I didn't read The Big Burn from D-List Larry, Dust Larceny Distillery, because I read the first issue and I hated it. This was by the team that created Skyward. I forget the writer because I don't have the credits because I didn't read the issue that was out this week. But the artist is Lee Garbett, who I really, really enjoy. You might like it. I just tried to do a little too much in the first issue. There's these two people and they're robbing a bank on the same day, and then they fall in love because they're both bank robbers, but they're different bank robbers. But then their life gets boring because they're bank robbers together, but then they get caught and they don't want to be caught, so they sell their souls to the devil, but then they don't like each other anymore because they don't have souls. And this is all just like the first 10 pages of the first 50-page issue. But then their souls are in hell, so they have to stage a heist to get their souls from hell so they can like each other again. I found it was one of those issues where I was like, this is so much idea, and I appreciate your idea, but I don't care. Like, I don't like any of these characters. I'm not rooting for them. The whole contrivance of them both robbing the bank at the same time, then falling in love, which is like a cute pitch for a book, but they had to whip past it through so fast to get to the meat of the story. And I get that. You got to get to the part of the story that matters to the reader. But for me, I just was like, I didn't get enough grounding in them to appreciate them. They kind of both weren't likable to me. They were just thieves. And so by the time we got to this whole mission to save their souls so they can remember how to love each other, I just was like, okay, we'll have fun with that. But that's the risk. That's the risk you take with any number one and structuring your story in any way. And for me, this one just did not click. I mean, really, really hard to get through for me. Did not click. Craft, very, very strong. I just did not like it. So I didn't read issue 3 this week. This is Bitter Root, which is back, and it has fast forwarded. It used to be part of the Harlem Renaissance movement set in the 1920s. Now we're up to the 1960s. And this is, of course, created by David Walker, Chuck Brown, and Sanford Green. It is drawn by Sanford Green with colors from Matt Herms, letters from Hassan Otsman Halal. I didn't really like this. I think it's going to be a drop for me. I remember a lot from the original series, but it's a huge cast of family members, and it was a lot to keep track of even then. And now we've advanced 40 years, and so clearly we're not supposed to have a perfect knowledge of the family, but it clearly is referencing things about the family that you should know or should remember. And I just don't think it did a good enough job getting me reinvested. Like, there's vampires or monsters of some kind that are killing people in the South, and the killings are being blamed on basically the Klan or racists, and the FBI is like, it's probably just racists killing these people. So it's kind of this like double stack of it getting brushed under the rug, which A, they don't really care because mostly it's black people being killed, but B, they don't really care because they're like, it's the Klan, we'll get them eventually open and shut. But really, it's monsters. Maybe I'll read one more issue. I loved Bitterroot so much at the beginning, and I just felt like as it wore on, it got more and more unfocused until I just couldn't even appreciate what was going on in a single issue anymore. And so it feels like this is starting in that same place. It felt very unfocused to me. So I don't know if I'm going to keep up with it. We will see. Next is Black Canary Best of the Best, which is by Tom King. I don't read that. And then we come to another one of the cheeky comics books from Pat Chan, Countless Little Deaths, which, if you know the origin of Le Petit Mort, which is Little Death in French, you would know what that has to do with a cheeky comic such as this. Then we come to The Crow, Flesh and Blood, which is actually just a straight reprint of a previously unreprinted run of the Crow comics. Then we come to Cyberpunk 2077 Psycho Squad, which is by Dan Waters, which makes me kind of interested, but it's based on like a video game and I don't play that game, so I'm not reading this. And then we come to Daredevil 19. This was such a total disaster that and the fact that we let this drag, I'm referring to, I'm going to credit the editor today, something I don't really do. Lauren Amato, associate editor, and Devin Lewis, editor. What the fuck are you doing? You let this go 19 issues to get to this story? I'll spoil it for you because it was fucking dumb. Wrath holds up Foggy and Bullseye, who's already torn an arm off of, and he's like, I'm going to drop them both. And then he drops them both. And so Daredevil throws a line to Bullseye, which Bullseye normally would be able to catch, but he's missing an arm, so he's a little off his game. And Daredevil catches Foggy, who would otherwise be defenseless. And then Bullseye dies, and Daredevil beats himself up about it. Here's why that doesn't work. Because it has nothing to do with Wrath. See, this is Wrath. This is our emotion that I'm feeling right now. It's Wrath. That had nothing to do with Wrath, so it didn't make any sense. So it didn't seem like it tied into the 7 Deadly Sins. So it just feels like we built for 19 issues over almost a year and a half to get to nothing. And then next issue, a new arc starts. So maybe that will be exciting. Okay, we're going to keep moving. Oh, here's more of that. I think I just wanted to remind myself how much I hated it. Then we get to Darkwing Duck, which I'm not reading. It's not a big Darkwing Duck fan from back in the day, although it is written by Daniel Killsmith, who is usually very, very funny. Then we come to Deadpool versus Wolverine slash... We come to Deadpool versus Wolverine Slash 'Em Up, which, if you had not been following, this was a digital comic last year on Marvel Unlimited, so you can still read it all for free, just being on Marvel Unlimited without even waiting 3 months for this, by Christos Gage, Alan Robinson, Carlos Lopez, and Joe Sabino. I always turn up for Christos Gage. I think he writes very funny, very charming comic books. This, you can tell that it was originally a vertical scroll Marvel Unlimited book, because even when they try to do interesting things with the paneling, like on this page, like having, the little circle panel, making some of them smaller, some of them big, in your mind, you can just see them all scroll up and down. It's basically Deadpool and Wolverine. Both are going after this very similar device, and they've got to get through a whole kind of like dungeon crawl of a building to get to it. So it's just got a lot of gags. Some of the gags are really good. If you like Deadpool for the like, what is the gag he's saying while he cuts this person in half, that's what this is. And then it has a really nice ending that kind of puts into perspective that Deadpool doesn't always do things for money, and sometimes he does things for money that he probably should have done anyway. And it made me smile. I mean, that's all it's got to do. I don't know that this digital comic was so good that it needed to be a print comic, but I liked it. It was fine. And there were some good gags. And again, they play with the paneling a little bit, but again, you can just picture how it would just be an all up and down vertical scroll. I don't know that any of the art really did so much with the vertical scroll that it played with the vertical toilet paper roll nature of it that much. So I don't think you'd be missing that much if you read it in a single issue, but I also don't think you'd be missing much from the single issue reading as vertical scroll. Here's yet another of the Pat Chan comics that were purportedly out this week. I don't know if they really came out. This one's Death Goddess of Cthulhu. I feel like we've had this already. Also, that girl, the blonde lady, looks like Sabrina Carpenter. Anyway, then we come to Department of Truth. I love the premise of this James Tynion book so much. And I love Martin Simmons, who's the artist of Punks Not Dead, never far from my grasp here on the shelf. But I just am having some struggles with this. I think if you're not somebody who reads 60 books a week and has time to really linger on this book, I think that's what I come to on this book. This is a book that this could be the only book in comics that you're reading. Like, you could really, really just linger on this, take it apart, look at all the implications of it. And I think because I read a volume of comics, sometimes I read it, I'm like, fine. And I've not just about this issue. I think the whole series, when really it's a comic that you have to kind of luxuriate in and have your own conspiracy theories and ideas about. So at this point, we've kind of covered the whole history of the Department of Truth, which is a United States government department that manufactures truth, because the more things people believe, the more they become real. And we're dealing with the idea that in the past, they thought they were so dangerous that they should be exposed. And so Tynion does this really interesting thing where he weaves this into events of the real world. And so he's basically saying Watergate it's so interesting. I mean, this is a spoiler, so fast forward if you don't want to know this. But they're playing with the idea that Nixon was the first president who really, really got into the idea of using the department as a tool. And the department realized that Nixon was too good at it. And so they would have to do something so real and believable to take Nixon down that they could kind of go underground again. And that's how they're framing Watergate. And that's a little bit of a spoiler, but there's so much more interesting detail in the book. This issue again was a little bit vague. I think Tynion a lot of times, when he gets a successful ongoing title like this, or something that's killing the children that's not just told in 12-issue installments like Nice House, I think sometimes he stalls for time a little bit. I'm feeling the same way on World Tree right now. I think when he's got artificial limits imposed on him, like he does on Nice House, like he does on Wind, he doesn't waste a single moment like he did on The Deviant. Here, I do think that even though there were interesting conversations in this book, there were just some wasted moments. And it's frustrating because if this book was all thick with content all the time, if this was a thick book, thick with content, it would be my favorite comic without. I just love this world. I love this X-Files world. I love this conspiracy theory world. I highly, highly recommend you read the first arc and decide for yourself. And I'm really interested to know if people have been keeping up with this, if you feel that decompression that's happening right now in this arc, or if you're still like totally as in love with it as you've always been. I didn't read Luana Vecchio's Doll Parts, A Lovesick Tale, because I was so disturbed by the first issue. But you know what? I do think it's interesting. I was rereading her author's note on the first issue, because I think I did read the first issue, and then I decided I wasn't even going to cover it. And she's saying, shouldn't I be able to make a comic like this as a woman about a female protagonist who does awful things and likes awful, bloody, disgusting, subversive things? But then even if I can do that, should that limit me to always being that artist? Oh, am I the sexy, naughty, lady artist now? Or can I also do other things? And so she kind of frames doing the series as, I know I probably should have pivoted to do a different kind of series after the original Doll Parts, but this is the story I want to tell. And I don't think anybody else is going to take the time to tell that. And you know what? I actually respect the hell out of that. And I also respect, I'm always saying, all these, born as male creators and cis male creators who are, all want to have a bunch of cis women be sexually abused in their books. Like, how about you turn the attention to males sometimes? Well, here's a woman who is writing about a woman who is not even abused, and but decides that she's going to like fight back about the idea that she's a victim. That's interesting. So if you have a high tolerance for trigger warnings, because there's all sorts of stuff in the first issue that triggered me, I didn't even read all 4, you might actually like this. So that is my backwards pitch about this book. So this is Doom Academy, One World Under Doom's tie-in Doom Academy. So it's the Strange Academy version in the world of Doom. It's written by Mackenzie Cadenhead, art by Pasquale Ferry, and then there's a storybook sequence by Jal M.P. Lemos and color by Edgar Delgado, and Jal M.P. Lemos color himself, and letters from Clinton Cowles. I loved this. I love it. I think it's really, really effective. Again, I think you can tell that Mackenzie Cadenhead comes from the world of YA literature because she keeps it so tight. It's not trying to tell us a story about every single kid in the Strange Academy. It's telling a story about 2 of them that are outside of the storybook, and then 1 of them that got caught in the storybook. And then the story in the storybook tells something interesting about what we've suspected is happening in Doom Academy on the outside. It just really works for me. I like the tight focus. I like the artwork. I think it's funny. I think it's charming. It's making me really, really care about these characters a lot, especially Zoe, who was not always one of the main characters in the original book, but Doyle, who almost always was the main character in the original book. It's really delightful. I think anybody who's liked Strange Academy up to this point will like it. And I think also, if you thought the beginning of Strange Academy was like too much, too overwhelming. This really solves for that. If that was your original dispute about the Scotty Young one. Before I move on, live fact check. When I said born as male a few minutes ago, I was trying to say cis male, and I said born as male first. Of course, there are people who identify as many things other than male who's born as male. Hello. So I did not mean that in a derogatory way, nor do I think that people who were born as male should never get to write any comic about other things than being male. So sorry if that came off wrong. This is what happens when I talk this fast. Sometimes, eventually, I'm going to get canceled by somebody, but I suspect you all knew what I meant. This is my Marvel pick of the week. How did this happen? Well, this is Doom Division, and it is by, oh my gosh, did I not save the credits? I saved like the recap page and didn't have the credits on it. So I can't credit the amazing team who made this book. I'll have to look it up because it was so good. It took this Tiger Division team who operate in Korea and protect Korea from supernatural threats, but they are basically co-opted by Doom, and their government agency was like, fine, one world under Doom, we'll do stuff for Doom. But it focuses on one of their main team members, Luna Snow, who's a hero, but also she is a pop star, and the basically government is using her as propaganda even while she's on her mission. So she gets on a mission, they're like, great, you just shot a music video. She's like, I shot a music video. And they're like, yeah, on your mission. So I really love that. And then I love also as it goes on, this team, who I don't know a whole lot about all of their members, it does a great job of like identifying each one of them and giving them some personality without giving us a whole kind of like beaten dead horse worth of background for them. I kind of understand what their powers are and I understand what their perspectives are in a really funny way. The action was easy to follow. And then we get to the twist, which is that they don't all necessarily want to support Doom, but they're like afraid to speak up because they like what they represent in their nation, even though their nation is just one part of this big World of Doom puzzle book now. And then at the end, we find out that there's some characters we're familiar with who are acting as an insurgency against Doom, and also some characters we're familiar about who are going to come from outside of Korea to join this team as part of the newly christened Doom's Division. It just really worked. I really loved the artwork. I'm going to have to just take a moment and look up who did this because it was so good. All right, give me a second. Yeah, you know, there's something about when you have one of these team books that has multiple disparate team members and they're not people that we're all necessarily familiar with, when it takes the time to like really explore them well and like define who they are in a way that lets me follow it, I'm just always impressed with that, because it's really easy, like we saw this in New Champions, to just throw a bunch of characters to the wall and say like, this is our team, there are so many of them, and then but not have a reason to like them. And I think that's a really big danger for a superhero comic, to like throw so many team members at us all at once that we don't have time to identify or decide which ones we like, which ones we don't like, which one we're suspicious with. So the writer here was Yoon Ha Lee. Fantastic job. The art by Min-Kyu Young is absolutely gorgeous. Great likenesses, really clear action. Matea Iancono is the color artist, and I really love the colors. I love how they were flat, but there were little moments of highlight in them, and letters by Travis Lanham. This was just a really good team comic book, which, as we talked about in the AMA, I love a good team comic book because I love team books, and they are some of my favorites. I haven't been reading Disney's DuckTales by Brandon McClare. I have not. Hold on, let's get cursor back to the right place. I did read Dust to Dust, though, one of my favorite comic books, and which was briefly in our top 10, just a little bit under it right now. This is written by J.G. Jones and Phil Bram, and it's art by J.G. Jones and letters by Jackie Marzan. This is the issue that really identifies the twist in this book. It shows us that there's more than meets the eye in this town, not in a supernatural way, I don't think, we're not sure, but just in that there's secrets buried here beneath the sand. It also gives us some of the history of the town and why it's in such a desperate condition, although obviously the Great Depression is enough of a summary for that. But it also gives us the history of our sheriff, and that he used to be more of a fuck up, and so he's trying to be better now, but he'll never have everybody's trust back because of how much he messed up in the past, and that's influencing how he's dealing with this death of this family who were leaving the Dust Bowl to go to California, but then they found them dead and picked over on the road. And the question is like, was it just the heat or the dust storm that got them, or something else? And this hints something else. This makes me appreciate last issue more, because last issue set up a lot of individual relationships that I was like, what does this have to do with anything? It kind of all paid off in this issue, but it kind of made me realize, in a way, this is being written for trade. It's 9 issues. They know exactly where it's going. So we're going to get some individual issues that are not as strong as other issues, because they're not trying to just give us rising and falling action in every issue. And I think something that last issue did was kind of artificially tried to insert some rising and falling action that just didn't super work. And that's why I didn't like that issue as much. I did like this issue because it had a natural rising and falling action to it leading up to the final reveal. So I really loved the series. Highly, highly recommended. I think it's really cool. You could see me talking about every issue on past of the show. I have talked about this one in the past. The Exorcism at 1600 Penn just wasn't that compelling to me. It's about the lady president who has some kids, and the kids go to Catholic school, and maybe one of them gets possessed. It really struck me as a TV pilot that didn't get made or picked up, and so then it was being enforced upon us as a comic book. Wasn't a big fan. Falling in Love in the Path to Hell is interesting. I did enjoy the first 4 issues. I just decided it wasn't for me. It's from Jerry Duggan. It's about this samurai and this Old West gunslinger who both died at the same time doing kind of righteous stuff. And they find themselves in a place that's neither heaven nor hell. One might call it limbo, but we don't know for sure. And so they're trying to find their way out of it as they fall in love on the path to hell. See how that happens? So none of that was spoilers. All that was from the first issue. I honestly think a lot of you would really, really like this. It's fun. It's brutal. It's very human. It's got really cool artwork. I just wasn't super interested in more of the story after I read the first trades worth of story. I was like, oh, that's cool. And you know, at the point that I'm reading 60 books per week, I don't need to read everything. So even though I just about do. This was Fantastic Four by Ryan North and Corey Smith. And on colors or inks or in Junior, I'm not used to talking about inkers anymore. Colors, Jesus Bertov, letters, Joe Carmaga. I don't know what happened to my boy Ryan North. Like, as soon as you get on a Marvel event, does your writing just get bad? Is it the curse of the Marvel events? We've seen it happen to many people in the past. I know some people like this. I talked to them. I believe them. I really, really didn't like it. I won't say hate it. I think there's always something interesting whenever Ben gets turned into not the thing to explore. But I just think that this. And up until this point, I was with it. Like, Alicia's like, let's just go out in the town. Like, I know you want to be Thing in this moment right now because Doom is taking over the world. And this is not a point where you just want to be a regular guy. Let's just try to enjoy it for one night. But then they almost get mugged. Thing forgets that he's not made of stone anymore. He gets hurt. From there, it just felt very rushed. It felt like maybe this could have been a 2-issue mini arc and it got squeezed to 1. And so we lost details. Like, all of a sudden he's walking with a crutch, which I kept looking at this page over and over again. Like, why? Because he fell on the ground, he got shot in the hand. But the whole rest of the issue makes the point that he's walking with crutches. Then he, decides to get involved with Puppet Master because of something that he really wants from him. But the sequence of him getting involved with Puppet Master is just so quick. And I don't fully believe that Ben would even do the thing. It didn't have enough time to breathe. So I guess I'm not saying Ryan North's writing is bad, although I did think the writing in One World Under Doom number 2 was bad. It just, this is what happens when you have somebody who's writing the main book of the event and their own book. I think it just starts to get so disorganized and unfocused. And we've seen this happen again and again. It was a Donny Cates problem on Venom during his 2 big events. It was a problem not for Kieran Gillen though during Judgment Day, because Kieran Gillen is a professional. Ryan North is a professional too, but I just, all of his Fantastic Four characters feel off to me all of a sudden. I don't know. Maybe he's leaning into the themes that are going to be the themes of the movie. Maybe this will all pay off later. It just didn't super work for me, which for a title that I usually am saying is one of my favorite titles was like a really big bummer. This was Far Down Below by Chris Condon, who I've been really enjoying at Marvel and DC. So I was like, ooh, back to indie work from Chris Condon. I think I'm going to stay away from his indie work because this one just didn't work for me. It wasn't bad. It just didn't work for me. So it tells the story briefly as an introduction of these people who are drilling under Eastern Pennsylvania, my home area, and they find something. And this is like 100 years ago. And then lights go out and we don't know quite what they found. Then in the modern day, or not quite the modern day, like the 80s, there's these 2 kids and they're just having a rainy day. They're playing dominoes. They're talking about Star Wars. And they're reminded that one of the kids' family has a haunted house, so they're going to go check it out. I mean, very Goonies vibes, but it just felt like a lot of the specific story wasn't really motivated. I've talked already about books that do a really good job of introducing new characters and make us feel their motivation right away and care about them. It just felt like this was very procedural. Like, we have to introduce the kids. We need to remind the kids that there's something spooky in their past. We have to take them to the spooky house. So it all kind of just felt very procedural to me. And then by the time I got to the end, really good art by Jeje Shao, by the way, and also letters from Nathan Kempf. But I just found that I love the street. Everything about it was very Eastern Pennsylvania. I wonder if Chris Condon is from there. I just think at the end, for a comic that's ostensibly about creepy ghost mole people beneath the earth, it just didn't take me all the way there to the point that I was interested in number 2. The thing that felt like it primarily happened in this comic book was like there was a lightning storm and things kept happening coincidentally to these 2 kids involving the lightning storm. Or was it coincidental? Or are the mole people making lightning almost hit the kids? It was like too many piles of coincidences. You've heard me call that a hat on a hat. Like if you want me to focus on something spooky, fine. If you want me to focus on coincidences, fine. If you want me to focus on mole people, fine. But there are too many hats on hats, and I couldn't decide what it was actually about. And ultimately, that's going to make me drop your book. I do not read Feral, which is described as the Aristocrats meets The Walking Dead. I do remember Max said he didn't really like it this week. So that's your feedback from me. Then we come to The Flash, which is kind of wrapping up an arc, but kind of it's just going to keep on rolling. So this is by Cy Spurrier with art by Vesco Georgiev, colors by Matt Herms, and letters by Hassan Osman Elhal. And it resolves a lot of things that have been happening on this family vacation arc. Flash has been split into 2 and probably was a bad idea. You can't have it all, Flash. It's hard to be a parent and a superhero. But this kind of brings the Flash being split into 2 plot together as both of the Flashes have to separately and together deal with Eclipso, kind of making his face and his motives be known. It has really cute stuff for the Flash family. The art is really good. I really like Matt Hearn's colors, but I was kind of just hoping to like wholly wrap this up. Like it felt like we had enough rope to hang up this Eclipso plot and be done with it, but it actually just seems like it ends with a cliffhanger that's going to make an even bigger Eclipso plot. And I do think that the problem that Spurrier got into in the first 13 issues of the series, which started really strong, was that by issue 7 or 8 we'd gone so far afield from the things he established in issues 1 and 2 that it just didn't even feel that satisfying anymore. Like it just felt like it had gotten away from him. And I think a lot of stories get away from Cy Spurrier. He's another one who does better with very limited territory to work with. And this unlimited Flash territory, you can almost just feel the plot start to creak under their own weight after they get past 4 or 5 issues. I just wish he would commit to shorter arcs. So it's not bad. I did enjoy it. The family stuff is adorable. I just got to the end, and when I realized it was going to roll into the next arc, I was like, oh, because I just wanted him to wrap something up for once. Okay, Frankenstein, New World. This is part of the Hellboy universe, and it is told by Mike Mignola, Christopher Golden, and Thomas Snigalski, all of whom I really enjoy. Art by Peter Bergting, and colors from Michelle Madsen, letters by Clem Robbins. I really like this book. And again, I have not read Hellboy and BPRDB to the end. So it keeps saying like, this is the world they sacrificed themselves for. Like, okay, great. Thanks for the spoiler. I don't know what that means. This just has Frankenstein traveling with this one girl, and it doesn't really explain totally why they have to get where they're getting, but I like it because it gives me Hellboy feelings, which is that Hellboy is not always going out looking for a fight in Hellboy. Oh, I never plugged in my computer. Hellboy is not always going out and looking for a fight. Sometimes Hellboy just happens onto something supernatural, and by who he is, he kind of is not only the right person to deal with it, but he's the right person to have sympathy for whatever is happening in that supernatural world, and to kind of like not just assume that they're vampires that need to be slayed. And this Frankenstein character has something really, really similar. I love the colors here. I love the setup of that there's this thing happening underwater, and he's like, well, I don't need to breathe. I'm just going to go deal with it. Why won't any of you people deal with it? Like, it just really, really worked for me. So I'm really enjoying this book. I think it might only be 3. No, maybe it's not limited. I hope it's ongoing. I feel like this Mignolaverse right now has so many little like 2-issue, 3-issue series, and I'm like ready to dig. I'm here. I'm ready. I want to dig my teeth in and like enjoy something, but it doesn't feel like there's any big titular characters left now that Hellboy and all the BPRB is gone. So I don't know if they're eventually going to come back or not, or I don't know if like Frankenstein and some of these other monstrous characters are going to be our leads, but I'm just looking for like a main book. So I told you I'm going to take a break after the G's, so we're almost there. This is Patrick Horvath's Free for All. It's entirely by Patrick Horvath. He, I think, even did the letters. Patrick Horvath, of course, we all know if we read Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees last year, one of my favorite series of 2024, about a serial killing anthropomorphic bear. This is similarly brutal, and this is one of the reasons that my Moment of Krisis came to mind. It's this idea of this world where if you have too much money in the millions or billions, you get entered into a lottery, and somebody gets picked from the lottery and has to be in a death tournament. But the person who wins or you could say, you know what, I don't want to fight to the death, just take half my money. Now you might still have so much money that you're still in that top portion of earners, but less money means you're less likely to get picked for the tournament. So there is incentive to just keep giving up your money by half every time you get picked. But some people are too stubborn and too proud, and they're like, no, I'm going to fight to the death. I want to keep all of my money. And as long as they keep winning in the death match, they get to keep their money. So this first shows us one person going into the tournament, and then it focuses on the person who's this longtime winner of the tournament and why he's the winner and how people feel about him. It was a really well-constructed book. It's a one-shot. It's a one and done. It really was a world that I wanted to spend more time in. And in a really interesting endnote that had a lengthy interview with Patrick Horvath, he talks about how he actually developed this book a while ago, and now that he rereads it and re-experiences, he's like, maybe there should have been more in this story. But I really like the world. I will say that there were aspects to the fight that it felt like there were too many things that could happen unexpectedly. At a point, especially with the characters hating each other as much as they did by the time we got to the really bloody fight here, I wanted to see more character-motivated fighting, and it really got into like a surprise, you don't know what all the body modifications these people might have, which is a cool beat to play. And it was all easy to follow. It was also all very visceral, all very bloody. The action was terrific. I love Patrick Horvath's mind. Personally, I wish that the fight itself at the end had come down less to gimmicks and had just been more personally brutal. But that's a small quibble in a book that I really, really like and do recommend, especially if you feel like we're tipping into oligarchy all across the world right now. This is a very interesting piece of fiction about that. I forgot that I said I was going to start reading everything Minor Threats after I liked that anthology book the other week. So I forgot that I was going to need to catch up to this until I was looking through the covers this morning. I was like, oh, issue 4. So I commit that I will go back and read the original Minor Threats miniseries so I understand what it's about, because all of it looks really good. And I did really enjoy that one issue that I read, but I didn't read From the World of Minor Threats, The Brood, issue number 4, because I'm totally not caught up. And then we have Furrlough, which originally debuted in 1991, and apparently it's a furry comic, and I would read it if I could find it digital, but Antarctic Press, some of their stuff goes up on Global Comics, but not all. So Antarctic Press, I mean, I might not like very many of your comics, but feel free to send me comps if you are watching. Then we come to G.I. Joe, a real American hero. G.I. Joe is there. So this, after a one-shot issue last month, picks back up on the main storyline. This is written, of course, by Larry Hama, art by Chris Mooneyham, who I've really grown to love, colors from Francesco Segala with flats by Sabrina Del Grosso, and letters from Pat Brosseau. This deals with the aftermath of the first kind of mega arc, all through the first 14 issues of this, although it was in pieces, but it really came to a head in 313, which with a confrontation between Destro and Cobra Commander is captured. He's taken off the board. So what does that mean for the Joes? Well, there's not a lot of Joes in this, a lot of Destro, a lot of Cobra Commander, and a lot of what goes on Cobra Island, basically with its leaders in absentia, because Cobra Commander's not there, Mindbender's not there, Serpentor's not there, they're all gone. And so right now, there's room for other bad actors, maybe even worse actors, to take control of all of the Cobra assets. I just really liked it. I love the art. I love the way the story is advancing. Like, I'm so into it. There was a sequence with the Joes where they basically are just driving on the Jersey Turnpike, and it's like pages and pages, and that's my home area. So I was like, okay, well, it's cool to see Jinx, my favorite G.I. Joe, and Scarlet, my second favorite G.I. Joe, driving on the Jersey Turnpike on a road that I have driven on 100 times. But it just felt like it was the wrong place to spend those pages. But again, that is a minor qualification about a book that I really enjoyed, especially the art. Chris Mooneyham, I've never liked him as much before as I've liked him on this G.I. Joe book. Godzilla versus the Fantastic Four. I think this might be our last book before the break, so ready your questions and comments. This was really, really interesting, and even though I didn't love it, and I'll tell you why. It was written by Ryan North, but it's not in current Fantastic Four continuity. It's set in Stan Lee era Fantastic Four, sometime after the origin of Galactus, but I think sometime before he leaves, because there's no Franklin Richards. They're still calling Invisible Woman Invisible Girl. And it's got art from John Romita Jr., but inked by Scott Hanna and colors from Marcio Menez. I didn't even realize it was JRJR. There's no slashes on the cheeks. How am I supposed to know it's JRJR if there's no slashes on the cheeks? This was the JRJR that I remember enjoying. It was kind of a nothing story. Like, okay, the Fantastic Four are fighting Godzilla, and up until a point that it takes like a really absurdist twist, and it's like, what if we have, what is the one with the multiple heads, Gojira? I don't know my Keiju really well. And what if we bring Galactus into this? And what if we bring the Silver Surfer into this? And at that point, I think it got kooky enough that I was like, okay, this was worth doing. And in a way that I think you had to set it in the Silver Age because I think this is before Godzilla was a canonical creature in the Marvel Universe, which he was in Godzilla, the original Marvel years, which does feature members of the Fantastic Four. And in the end, he just wades into the water, but they've seen him at that point. Marvel can't reference this anymore because it's got a licensed character, but it did happen and it was in continuity. So I think it works that this is before that, but also I think it works to put this in a universe that can be kookier. And maybe we're going to see it through the eras. Like maybe we're going to do a bronze because there's like 6 one-shots of Godzilla versus the Marvel Universe. I think it would be cool if they did next a bronze one and then an 80s one and then a 90s one. And they took us through the different eras to see how characters interact with Godzilla at different times. But I think if you like Godzilla and you like this kind of brand mashup thing, it will ring for you. And I think John Romita's pencils, I think this is as good as he's looked since he's been back at Marvel. I don't know if it's Scott Hanna doing the inks or what, but there were only 1 or 2 panels that had that typical, oh man, JR, what are you doing? Quality to me. Oh wait, there was more G's. Green Arrow. I am just so addicted to this story right now being told by Chris Condon with art from Montos, colors by Adriano Lucas, letters from Hassan Othman El How. I did look up how to pronounce it. I just forgot. This issue was a little bit of an in-betweener. It had a lot of panel time to spend on the background of the city that, had the groundwater and irradiated and everybody's getting cancer. But it was fun because we got to see a little bit of Ollie out of costume and how he's got to just play the fool, partially because he doesn't want everybody to be in his business as Green Arrow, but partially because he understands he's one of the targets of these killers because he very briefly was the CEO of the company that's responsible for, irradiating and I never could think of the word I'm looking for, not infecting, contaminating this land. And so he's got to kind of play dumb, but he plays dumb in a really delicious way. The art continues to be good. There's a really tense kind of chase sequence at the end where he's in this abandoned town and he's like trying to find a certain person. And I was like really on the edge of my seat. This was not the best issue of this run, but it is continuing the very high, delightful quality of this run. I really, really enjoy it. And then we come to Green Lantern, another run that I'm really enjoying. This, if it was not for those 2 Absolute books, just blowing my freaking mind, this may have been my DC issue of the week. Jeremy Adams writing, Jack Herbert on art, loved the art. Colors from Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters from Dave Sharp. I think I understand Jeremy Adams' plan now. This and Core are not really 2 separate titles. They really are going to trade off month after month and kind of trade some characters, trade some plots, and that's intentional. So my whole complaint that they felt too similar, I take it back to a degree. So this issue has a really, really, really cool space fight between Hal Jordan and Kyle Rayner and Superboy and this new lady character who I don't really remember her name against Sorrow and some other bad guys. The art was just so cool. I think I originally had captured like 6 pages of the art in this, but then after that fight, we get a whole meeting with the Green Lantern Corps, and then Hal meets up with Star Sapphire and he goes to Earth and they have even further adventures on Earth. The page before this was so good, but I wanted to save it for you. I try not to use a lot of pages that are full page splashes because I feel like that's the fun of reading a comic book, and it was such a good page. I loved it. Like Jeremy Adams fit in so much story, and he's not trying to make Hal seem like a total good guy. Like I think the right way to write Hal Jordan is he's a little bit of an asshole, and he is a little bit of an asshole in this book, but he's still the lead character and we can still follow him, but he's just a little bit of an ass. And it seems like Kyle Rayner is going to continue to star in this one too. And I just love it. I don't know if I've ever been this into a Green Lantern ongoing with Hal before. I think it's really good. Go back and start from the beginning. Give Jeremy Adams like 5 issues to really get the steam going, especially because he got interrupted by nightmares like on issue 3. But this run is great, and they're scoring amazing artists. I love Jack Herbert's art on this issue. Now we come to Grimm Fairy Tales. It's interesting. I started to go back to catch up on the few bits of Grimm Fairy Tales that I've missed. And this same art team has been on it for a really long time. Babashu Cortez and George Cortez. And they drew some issues that to me are the best that Grimm Fairy Tales ever looked, especially in the 50s. If you really want to pick this title up somewhere really enjoyable, go back and pick it up from like issue 51. The 50s of this book were great, but it just feels like they're like a little bit rushed or overworked here. The characters just look a little gray. I don't know if it's because Babish Cortez is going really heavy on the blacks and the shade under these characters' skin tones, but it all looks very gray to me. That said, This issue was actually really enjoyable. It does the thing that I like that this book does, which is bring in another named superheroic, fantastical character here, Van Helsing, who is always Zenoscope's best character. And because she has a very distinct personality and a very distinct voice, it helps give focus to the other characters in the story that's about kind of this vampire queen who's hunting for them. So a lot of the side characters are still kind of ciphers, but anytime we have Sky Mathers, who's the main character, and we get another named character for her to bump up against, the book tends to be really best in those issues. This didn't have a lot of meat to it. It was a little decompressed. It moved a little quickly, but I like Grimm Fairy Tales, and this was a decent issue of Grimm Fairy Tales. Again, go and if you want to just pick up an issue that I think has good art, good voices, explains the concept of the book, tells you what it's all about, go read issue 51. I think issue 51 really is a good jumping on point. Oh my gosh, there's so many G's. This is Gunslinger Spawn, written by my friend and yours, Todd McFarlane, with art from Carlo Barbieri, colors from Ivan Nunes, and letters from Tom Orzechowski. I will say, I think the Todd father bat a error-free game in this issue when it came to the script, which put a lot of the focus on Carlo Barbieri's art, which I think at some points, especially drawing this angel character, and I know I had a lot of positive things to say about last month, at points it gets a little overwhelming. Like, he's fighting Gunslinger Spawn and this dog, and he's got all of his angel ribbons that we have back from when Angela debuted in the 1990s. And then he's also got this big skirt that he's wearing. And it's just, and then there's points in this fight, and then he's got multiple wings because he's biblically accurate. There's points in this fight that I just could not tell what was going on anymore. And because I think the art was just a little too tight on the fight. I think Carlo Barbieri does better when he's got a little bit more space to work with. And then it went into this really long personal scene, which I'm happy that Todd is taking time to have Gunslinger not just be Spawn, but also be himself. But the scene kind of went around in a circle a little bit about like what was it about. Todd got into that trap where sometimes he starts writing a scene and he doesn't seem to always know his way out of it. That said, I've also been catching up on the past issues of this title, and so I think I've read up to like issue 10 at this point. This started out really readable and fun. So I think it is a book that is somewhat relying on your existing affection for this character, who it turns out has been really well developed over the course of the series. And so the more and more I read catching up, I think the more and more I like the current issues, because I kind of understand what's so likable about him, even if that likable thing is not currently in the current issue. All right, that brings us to the end of the G's. Wow. Let me take a breath, and then we're going to get through some comments. Probably not all of them, because, oh my goodness, it's been a while of talking. I've been basically talking for an hour. Okay. Drinking some water. I remember some of this. An hour ago, Kenneth Gurley asked, am I surprised that the Big Two has not done something like the Love is Love comic for the Los Angeles wildfires? I think Marvel and DC, I think it hit them in a tricky season where they're already doing a lot of their like the Black History Month comic, the Pride comics just got announced. I think they're doing a lot of their anthology books already. And as we talked about, I think Marvel and DC books tend to have a longer lead time. So I think the reason that book worked is there was no story, there was no continuity, there were no characters. It just was asking a bunch of people to turn in a page each with their pals. I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel or DC does a benefit at some point for them. But at the same time, Marvel and DC doesn't do a ton of books like that anymore. I'm trying to think of, I mean, they did some like Heroes at Home style books during COVID, but they were also to just relate the superhero world to our world. So I guess I wasn't surprised really based on the lead times. Okay. What to do when you want to sell your books, but nobody's buying them, and lowering the price even more is becoming too ridiculously cheap. You have to just accept that sometimes the market just isn't there for the books you want to sell. Maybe it could be the way that you've keyworded it. I mean, eBay is just a giant search engine. Facebook Marketplace, they're just search engines. So if you put all the artist names in, if you put other similar titles, did you say Marvel and TC, make sure you've done the most to help people find it. But then also maybe just try packaging different things. Like if the books aren't selling individually, put them in a bigger lot. Make the lot cheap and put one book that you know people are interested in, and some books people are lesser interested in. I don't know. I haven't sold a lot of books, but I do pay attention to how people market themselves on those marketplaces. So that could be a thing to try. Sazmurph is retroactively absolving Cyclops from Bob Layton's bad plotting decisions. Mink saying when the Bendis X-Men Omnis come out, which all new or uncanny will be read first, they happen at the same time. They're both by Bendis. They're very interwoven. I have kind of sort of a comment on how to read them on my Crushing Crisis pages about them, but it's not like a full reading order. But I mean, it goes back and forth so much, you almost can't map it perfectly because sometimes issues are happening simultaneous to each other. I would say, I don't know. You really just have to go back and forth, or you just choose the one you're going to read first. I guess I was trying to think, does one spoil the other more? But I think the thing is, Uncanny X-Men, the omnibus, only has 3 story arcs. It's really just the opening story arc with the sideline in limbo, then the Shield story arc that crests around issue 20, and then the original Sin story arc, which a lot of which doesn't really count because of the way it plays with time. I'm not saying there's not one-shot issues in there, but I think it's 3 big chunks. So I think what you could do is read a chunk, and then when it feels like you reach the end of a chunk, go and read that many issues in the All New X-Men Omnibus and go back and forth in that way. Whereas All New X-Men is very much an arc-based book. There's 4 and 5 and 6 issue arcs. Lance McNair was introduced to the X-Men by Evolution, so we'll always love Cyclops. Apparently he was cool there. Hello and good afternoon to William Lee. Super Job, a regular. Who would I say my current number 1 favorite writer and number 1 favorite artist? Well, that's easy. They made a book this week. Kelly Thompson and Mattea De Lewis. I mean, I think the thing is, I have different artists who I like for different things. Mattea De Lewis is my favorite artist doing that super hyper realistic thing, but I absolutely go crazy for Rafa Sandoval on Absolute Superman. So I like anybody who's part of that kind of Jim Lee derivative tree, which in turn is derivative of Gene Colan and Neil Adams. So of that Gene Colan and Neil Adams derivative tree, I really like Rafa Sandoval. I really, really like Carmen Carnero. So I have a lot of number 1 artists, but it's really hard to top a Kelly Thompson comic book for me, except for, of course, by the Kelly that preceded her on Captain Marvel, Kelly Sue DeConnick. So I'm going to go ahead and say for now, this could change at any moment. I'm going to say Kelly Sue DeConnick and Kelly Thompson are my 2 favorite writers. And I'm going to say that Mattea De Lewis, Rafa Sandoval, and Carmen Carnero are 3 of my favorite artists. But what we really got to get into is who are my favorite colorists, which I am not prepared to talk about right now. One Wheelchair X, I usually don't bring up people adding each other, but One Wheelchair X was explaining how those issues cross over to each other. One Wheelchair X, also in the Friends of Crushing Crisis channel strip. Please go subscribe to his channel and bully him into making more videos about X-Men, because I want to hear him talk about X-Men more, please, more. James Abel saying Absolute Martian Manhunter number 1, the showcase of how beautiful the art of comic series can be in a unique and interesting way. You're on a journey of self-discovery with the main character, and that is absolutely what appealed to me. Absolute Martian Manhunter, Cool Angel says, such a fun and trippy book. Must have been what reading Strange Tales was like in the 60s. James Abel said Absolute Wonder Woman 6. Wow, Mattea De Lewis art in this issue is amazing. It's very heavy in Greek god mythology, and I loved every second of it. Super Job said Absolute Martian Manhunter blew me away art-wise. I loved the Zatanna book Rodriguez did, but this was even better. Here is that Mattea De Lewis Instagram. Please go check it out. His art process is incredible. Novarg loves how this Wonder Woman looks. She looks my significant other, only more buff. Kelly Thompson has a great Substack newsletter. I don't really do a lot of Substacks, but she's my favorite writer, so I do follow hers. And she had a great newsletter this week. I have to go leave a comment because it really made me think. But she said a lot of people were worried that Hayden Sherman's very Greek featured Diana would get lost with other artists doing it, and she's like, no, clearly I'm friends with these artists, and I communicated that to Mattea De Lewis. And she also just really talks a lot about the process of art and covers and how things get chosen and how involved she is. Really, really good read. She really should go and subscribe. Max Appleman summing up ASM number 70 in one word: stupid. Javier Hernandez saying, I think I hyped this issue of Absolute Wonder Woman too much before reading. I didn't dislike it, but it was good rather than amazing. That's fair. I think because I was so soft and the first arc being so decompressed, I think I tamped my hype meter down a little bit, so I wasn't as crazy about it. Here's a contrasting opinion on Batman 158, Too Hush, Too Furious. I did enjoy seeing Jim Lee back in the art. Nightwing had the best line. We've got like 9 Robins and 14 Batgirls and a Huntress. The plot was just okay for a part 1. Cruel Angel says, good start for the silence. Joker got seriously wrecked. Everybody loved that line. That was the line of the book. We've got 9 Robins, 14 Batgirls, and a Huntress. But Nick N says, did not grab me. Kind of disappointed. A 5th of Jack Gaming loves Jim Lee art, but it was rough. Okay, so it wasn't just me. Bunkmaster B is taking to calling the sequel Hush Tua. No, I'm not. I am not going to keep saying that, sir. No. And Novark says, I refuse to buy cash grab runs like Batman Hush 2. Doesn't really care for the character, but trying to ride the hype of a once great test for Lee, seeing if he could still work on a big title. Yeah, I think there's a place for that. And I think there's a place to come back to a story from 20 years ago and revisit it. But I think it's clearly here as a marketing event. I think To me, there's a real contrast between that and what Jeff Loeb is doing in The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. That to me feels born out of love and like it was a story that was always meant to be told. And I know it benefits from being a retcon story that is sequentially telling the next story in that world of The Long Halloween after that and Dark Victory. But that to me, I don't find myself rolling my eyes at that existing at all the way that I do roll my eyes at Hush 2. Kane likes a good bank robbing story, but throwing romance into it, that's a pass. Yeah, we don't want to see. Is this a kissing book? Is this a bank robbery with a kissing book? But if you want another kaiju score, there is also Godzilla Heist, which I liked the first issue of, and we're waiting for a second issue. Kane really liked Bitter Root, though, so looking forward to reading more of that. Max Appelman was dropping Daredevil. Kane saying, a rare instance where Daredevil had poor writing. Yeah. I think Daredevil's streak has finally been broken. It's been good since 1998, or if you believe Omar, it might have been good since 1981 because Omar likes the Chichester era. But yeah, such a letdown this run, Stoops. I agree. But James Abel did read Darkwing Duck number 2. It was okay. Darkwing number 1 was better. Maul 360, I had Maul rolling with my Daredevil rant. Don't hear about bad Daredevil too often, says Lance, because it's not often that bad. Cyril saying that dropped after the 3rd or 4th issue for your own sanity. Now, I was still liking it that early in the run, so good on you for figuring out I think sometimes the market does get a little ahead of me. I get so invested in single issues as constructs that sometimes I'll really like a single issue of a run that's clearly tipping in a bad direction. Or alternately, I'll be like, this issue sucks. And people are like, have some patience, Crisis. This is going to go somewhere good. And I think that happened to me with Dust for Dust in the last issue. I'm just so invested in the craft of a single issue. If I'm reading them as singles, it's different when I'm reading a trade paperback that I sometimes kind of lose the forest for the trees a little bit. James Abel, Doom Academy, beware of fairy tales because they are based on true stories. Here comes Hansel and Gretel. The part within the book didn't work for me. Oh, well, it worked for me, but I love having a contrasting opinion. I promise to bring this up with our therapist this week. Max Appelman said, enjoyed. Stoops saying, I haven't read the second issue or the first run, but the first issue of this Doom Academy was cool. James Abel loved Doom's Division. Writer, thank you for getting the credits for me while I couldn't find them. It was because the credits are on the last page. I think I just mechanically saved the first intro page as if it was the credits page, and then that was not it. Flavio MRP is here saying hello to everyone. James Abel with a very interesting thought. Fantastic Four number 30, so much emotions and self-discovery within the first few pages. You can almost classify this issue as a case study for people with a disability, which is a really interesting take on it that makes me maybe appreciate it a little bit more. James made a relatively rare on-camera appearance this weekend on OmniDog's Vault for the birthday stream, talking about toys. James has these cool toys that are the mascots of like cereals and chips and things, which I don't pay attention to toys, so I didn't know they existed, but I was nerding out as he showed them. They were so cool. Next, Imaginon, thank you for adding me, so I know that you're talking to me. Ripiverse, I don't know what their royalty structure is. Best case scenario where their book's given creator enjoys all the profits, but pays July for the license and publishing overhead a la Image. But July is not merely a right-wing grifter, but also a virulent hate monger and involved in a slew of targeted harassment campaigns like and along. Okay, well, maybe we won't read Ripiverse, but I still... just because I'm me, I'm still interested in reading a number one of every comic because I want to know. I would rather be able to say, this is by a virulent hate monger. It's a pity that it's good and I'm not going to keep reading it, but that is just how my mind works. Always an instigator saying, why is Omar passively abusing us by not announcing an immortal X-Men Omni? It's coming. They can't put them all out at the same time. At the pace that we got Dugan and then Ewing, I think every quarter there's going to be a Krakoa Omni. I just don't think it's a good idea that they're collecting so much of the good parts of Krakoa as individual omnibuses because it's going to hurt the reading order omnibuses. And then Marvel's going to be like, you told us you'd buy them, you lied. And we're going to say, no, assholes. It's because you put all the good content out as individual omnibuses first. James Abel read far down below. If you love movies from the 1980s, this is a book for you. Young kids and the hunt for an adventure. It's a very Hardy Boys meets the Goonie. Totally agreed. Moon and Frankenstein New World is a limited 4-book story. I believe that will be part of a trilogy. Well, I mean, that's always been Hellboy's model. Very rarely has Hellboy just been ongoing. So I can appreciate limited series knowing there's going to be more limited series. James, the medium answer is here saying, sorry, you're late. You're here at exactly the time you are meant to be here, which is the time you are here now. Kane, Jersey Turnpike, my ears perked. Good luck driving on that. Yeah, I definitely drove some tricky streets because I did not get my license until I was in my 30s. And I had to learn in Philadelphia, which is pretty aggressive. I mean, it's not like New York hard, but there are parts of Philadelphia that are tricky to drive in. And then my local highways were 95 and Jersey Turnpike. All right, we're going to get back to the books in just a moment. Cool Angel saying the multi-headed dragon in the Godzilla book is Ghidorah. Logan Wayne saying, JR, you say you have my attention. It was good, JR. Good, the good stuff. The good stuff. Stoops also loving Green Lantern. Lance McNair, what do I think is the single most detrimental aspect of comics today? I think it's disposability. I think it's this idea that it's just coming out in the month and you just want that sweet, sweet $4 or $5 and it just doesn't matter. I think for how much effort goes into a comic, especially artists, like I always talk about movie directors. When you direct a movie, that's like a year or 2 or 3 of your life. You've got a limited number of movies you can direct, right? Comic book artists, I mean, if they drew that whole issue, that was probably close to a month of their life. We've only got so many months. And I think when we treat comics as disposable at any level, if you write a disposable, decompressed story, if you market it like just like a flash in the pan, buy this book, it's big this month, and nothing big really happens. If you're not marketing them in a sustainable way, I think sustainability in marketing is not just about greening marketing. It's about selling products that are not disposable. And when we talk about fast fashion, it's like selling these things like you'll wear this dress once and it only has to last once and then it's going to fall apart and then you'll throw it apart. I feel like the fast fashion of comic book marketing is the most detrimental thing to comics. I think comics that are like, this is a run, we're settled in, you're going to treasure this, or like Kieran Gillen saying, I'm only putting the letter pages in my individual issues, or like, you know, trade paperbacks, like having like special back matter, things that make comics feel durable and sustainable, I think is the positive version of the detrimental trend. Is there a Marvel or DC character I've read mostly in chronological order? I mean, the X-Men. I don't know, because I came into so many things in 2010. And so I read a lot of books from basically 2004 to 2010, because that was when trades started, like in 2004, being consistent. So I read a lot of characters from 2004 to 2010, but very few characters from the beginning. For me, that would have to be like Image, but I skip around. And part of me is like, even though I always tell myself, oh, I'm going to sit down and read all of these epics in a row. For me, I actually like the skipping around. I like the hypertext aspect of comics. So some people are heading out to the reprint stream, which is cool. I know that you're going there. That's why I started as early as I did, but we are going to continue. Ooh, Bunkmaster got to meet Rosenberg and Boss. So cool. Super job appreciating my Princess Bride reference. Ryan Wilson saying what's up, and One Wheelchair Us saying thank you for the shout out. I know you've got a busy life, and I know you can't make videos on demand, but we are demanding that you make more videos and actually leaving for your real life job at the end of the week. Positive reasons. Oh, leaving our real life job for positive reasons. So you're going to have more time in your hands for X-Men. Okay, we got to get back to talking about comics. And if you're leaving for the Epic stream, have fun with my friends on the Epic stream. I don't have the new PDF yet. And I will be voting for Epic reprints, I suppose, even though I own all of them. So I don't really need them to be reprinted, but I will think about what I want to be reprinted. And we will see you on the replay. All right, let me get the next PDF open. I just had a total brain evacuation and I can't remember where I saved anything on my computer. Could you imagine if I had coffee? Like, would I be more high key, but then at the same time, would I just be talking at the speed of light? Single page. Okay, let's get into the H's, y'all. Oh no, too big. We can't see the timer. There we go. Okay. So this is Harley Quinn, issue number 49. I am really liking this Elliot Kahn run of Harley Quinn with Mindy Lee on art, Fiona Farrell on colors, and Lucas Gattoni on letters. I don't understand people that don't like it. I don't know what your problem is. I love this. This was really a big conversation between Harley Quinn and this real estate developer who she has a love, hate, lust relationship with. And it's funny because it's just playing the comedy of they're both attracted to each other, but they're just polar opposites. There's lots of commentary about, capitalism, but it's funnier than Mark Russell would do because Elliot Kahn actually pretty funny. And then there's like a fight, but the fight is not really the point. I just think this really sells the joke so well. And it's a Harley that I believe, but it's giving her a bit of business to do. I think the problem is that if you make Harley too wacky and silly, sometimes you can only give her wacky and silly plots. And so you're enjoying the wacky and silliness of her, but the plots don't hang together or don't go anywhere or don't feel directional because it's only letting her be silly. This found a plot, this idea of gentrification of a place that she cares about, that always will give her a bit of business to do in every issue. And I think that's the way that you do a Harley book that really works. But speaking of a Harley book that really works, let's talk about Harley Quinn, Fartacular, Silent but Deadly. Because y'all, I bought this dumb $8 comic book, and let me tell you, it was double length, but I think it was $8 because the actual physical issue was smelly or scratch and sniff or something, which clearly the digital issue wasn't, but they always make the price the same for digital. Anyway, I was expecting something deeply, deeply disturbing from this. And you know what? It got deeply disturbing a few times. But this first page really is what it's about, and it made me actually really fall in love with it. It's about unconditional love. Harley's watering her plants, and Harley gives just a little toot. And Ivy, Ivy is watering plants, gives a little toot. And Harley's like, oh, I love that about you. And Ivy, as many people would be, was like, don't love my farts. That's gross. But Harley is kind of like conflicted because she's like, but I love all of you. I love even the weird smells of you. It's all cute. It's all unconditional love. And so Harley goes on a process of self-discovery, not about being a fart fetishist, but about if other people have felt this way about the people they love. And actually, writer Joanne Starrer brings in a real historical literary fact that James Joyce wrote letters to and about his beloved, where he even says that he admires her flatulence. And so Harley finds these letters and goes on a whole caper about the letters, which are cursed. There are a few, look, this is toilet humor, and there are a few points that the fart stuff was just too much for me, but it was a pretty funny story. It's in current continuity. The house that she's at with Harley is in Marshview, which is where Ivy is in her current run. And honestly, it was really heartfelt. And it was just about loving somebody so much that your love for them almost overwhelms a little, but also about farts. I'm not telling you to go spend $8 on it, but when it pops up on DC Universe, I do think you should give it a read. Also, the art was by Branton Stein, who I follow on social media. They draw adorable stuff. They did that book. Oh, its name isn't coming to me. Crowded, about the sourced assassins. And their art on this was great. I don't know why they're not a regular artist on a book that's like Harley Quinn, that's kind of like a cartoony, funny book. Their drawings of Plastic Man were incredible. So I found a way to really love this issue. I don't read Hello Darkness because it is a horror anthology, and I don't love horror, and I certainly don't love anthology. I don't even think I dropped it. I think I read like the preview pages of issue number 1. This is issue number 3, and I just was not into it from Ahoy Comics. But so this book, I Heart Skull Crusher, I don't know why I didn't have it in my poll, and I almost just went past it because I was like, I don't know what this is, but that's not the spirit of the show. And then I noticed this name on the cover, Campbell, you say? And then I looked up the full credits. It's Josie Campbell, who just wrote that Shazam book that I was obsessed with. So I swore I was going to pick up the next Josie Campbell book that I saw. So this morning, as I was like doing hair and makeup, I got through the first 3 issues of this book while also catching up on some other stuff. I love this. So I don't have anything from issue 8. Issue 8 might have sucked. I have stuff from the first 3 issues. So this is about this post-apocalyptic world, and there's this game. It's kind of like half Hunger Games, half soccer, half like American Gladiators, where everybody plays the game and everybody bets water so they can conserve water and have water to drink. And there's a tournament to get into the pro leagues, and you've got to wager your water to get into the tournament. So there's this one girl who's obsessed with the game, and she's obsessed with the major player, Skull Crusher, who's not only good at the ball part of the game, but good at the killing people part of the game. And she's determined to get through this tournament so she can join the big leagues and basically meet Skull Crusher, and also maybe play in a team with her, but she just wants to meet her. So this is all about her. She has nothing. Nobody knows who she is. Nobody cares about her. And so she has trying to amass a team for this murder ball sport and then get through the tournament. So it's a tournament book, much like Fence, which I absolutely love. And I love, 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 love the art by Alessio Zono and colors by Angel De Santiago. Good letters from Jim Campbell. It's just really, really charming. I like a book that can really ground you in super realistic, kind of face-to-face, deep panels like the one on this page, but then kind of just go totally wild. This character is singing the national anthem, and then it turns into like a hard rock song. So it starts like, oh, say, can you see by the light of Queen Mob? And then like starts thrashing. And I love that an artist has the range to go from this kind of like really personal, maybe pseudo romantic look to just this like wild and crazy look. I'm totally hooked by this book. I cannot wait to binge all the way the rest to issue 8. It turns out that I do love tournament sports books if they've got a twist. So I liked Fence because it was like a tournament sports book, but it's like at an all boys academy and everybody's gay. So like that was an interesting twist. I like this because it's a sports book, but it's post-apocalyptic and the sport actually involves murdering people, and the field of the sport is actually trying to kill you. Well, I guess it's a little Quidditch-esque too while you're doing the sport. So I'm totally hooked. I'm so happy I made time to read it. I don't make time for Incredible Hulk. This is one of the few in continuity Marvel books that I refuse to read, but I do make time for Infinity Watch, which has a very interesting relationship with continuity right now. This is by Derek Landy. This is all by the B artist Enid Baum, who's drawing kind of a sub-continuity within continuity. Colors from Brian Reber and letters from VC's Corey Petit. So you know that I have a resistance to anything alternate reality at Marvel. I just want to see the characters be the characters that I love in the reality I love. However, this really worked for me. So all of the Infinity Watch, which are the people that are imbued with the Infinity Stones, almost died. And in a last second play to save them, Star, who we know from Kelly Thompson's Captain Marvel, uses the Reality Stone to shunt them into another reality that's as quick as she can think to try to keep them safe. And this reality has no superheroes, but they're all there. And she's managed to keep them alive. But this force that's hunting them is crashing through the reality, not just the physical world, but also the construction of the reality, to the point that it starts fighting with the narration and taking reality apart via the person it chooses as its emissary here, who is Norman Osborn, who it has become a superhero, the Green Goblin, even though there's no superheroes in this world. It's, you know, very self-referential, very Grant Morrison, Animal Man, very Gwenpool, but I like it. I like that we started in the Marvel reality. We're in this pocket reality that was deliberately created as a reaction to things happening on the outside. And then we're going to step outside of it, I assume, again, by the end. That's smart. I keep telling you, Derek Landy is part of this class of writers right now who feels right on the verge of a breakout. The way that Jed MacKay felt when he was writing Black Cat. I think that Chris Condon is right there. I think Derek Landy is right there. I think there's a few people who just feel like poised to get really big, and everybody's going to freak out and talk about how much they've been loving them. And you have the opportunity to love Derek Landy right now before he's super cool. So get on it. I am not reading Into the Unbeing because I don't really like Zach Thompson's writing, but this is a third book coming out every month by Hayden Sherman. I don't know how they do it. I did read It's Jeff because it's Kelly Thompson and another artist who's one of my favorite artists, Guruhiru, who is actually an art team. I'm not giving myself a full minute for this. It was a 10-panel comic, but it's a multi-part Jeff arc. So there's only, 10 little scrolly pages in this one, but there's going to be more next week. And it's Gwenpool trying to give Jeff medication, which if you've ever had to give medicine to a cat or a dog or a small toddler, it is like riding a bucking bronco. And I laughed out loud of every page of Jeff with his sad little shark rash and Gwenpool trying to get him to take his medication. So charming. Exactly why we love Jeff. I did not read John Carpenter's Tales of Science Fiction Pause, issue 2 of 6. I did, however, read Justice League Unlimited by Mark Waid, Dan Mora, Tamara Bonvillain, and Dave Sharp. This made me ask the question, how do you rate a comic book that you loved all of, and then you got to the last page and you hate the last page? Like, is that a 4 because you just took a few points off from the last page? Or is it like if a gymnast doesn't stick the landing, it's like, well, then how much did the routine count if you didn't stick the landing? Because I loved this. Right, the Justice League has to go to the G20 summit and keep all the world's politicians safe, but they get shunted into a side pocket reality that they're getting picked off by all of these monsters. It's got Flash mentoring Impulse. Of course, Mark Waid wrote Impulse a really long time, so that's really delightful to see. It's got Hal Jordan and Star Sapphire together, which we just saw in the Hal Jordan book. So as we were talking about earlier with continuity that I enjoy, like clearly it's playing around the same time as another book that came out the same week. I love that. All of it was great. Also, Tamara Bonvillain's colors on this really cool. I keep saying a lot of what you like about Dan Moore's art is Tamara Bonvillain's colors, but then the last page reveal, I hated it so much. We've only had 5 issues of this comic book so far, and we've right. This is issue 5, not issue 4. Yeah, issue 5. And we've just built up this cool new enemy, Inferno. And I do agree that it's time to reveal a little something at the end of the 5th issue because people need a reason to keep reading. And I talked about that a lot last week. But the reveal, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's the most expected, dumb, boring reveal that it could be. It's just the same. It's just recycled from every Justice League book we've already read. And I don't want it. I don't want it. So I'm hoping that Mark Waid is going to put more of a twist on it. Since this is crossing over with World's Finest, maybe there's like they're from the past or from the future or from some, that's not good enough. I think this wasted a great build up and it's completely canceled the good faith that it had for me. So we'll be starting from zero next month because I hated that final twist. Speaking of kaiju books, maybe you don't want to see a kaiju heist. Maybe you want to see kaiju cooking. This is Kaiju Cooking and manga title from Antarctic Press. I did not read Kids, a one-shot horror book from the Ninth Circle imprint at Image by Garth Ennis because I just don't generally vibe with Garth Ennis. So if you read it, put it in the comments. I'll comics strength, and I'll try to get your comments in later. Kill Train we dropped after issue number 2. The people all over the world should not join hands and get on the Kill Train. I just was not feeling it. You can see my past rants about that on past shows. Now we come to Lara Kinney Wolverine. This was written by Erica Schultz, art by Giada Belviso, color art by Rachel Rosenberg, letters from Corey Petit. And I was nervous to have this be all about Winter Soldier. I was like, another guest star? Really? We just had 2 issues with Elektra. Isn't Lara a big enough draw on her own? Like that we don't need all these guest stars who also are in their own books that need their own sales. Like at least use a guest star like Steve Rogers, who's not in a book right now. But it had some things working on its side. I love how Giada Belviso draws civilian Lara. It's perfect. She looks like the her she's always been for the past 20 years of comics, but she's also new and a little older and a little different, and she emotes so well. I love every panel that they draw of her out of costume. And then also Erica Schultz plays this really great beat about how Lara, she being a mutant in secret is not even a thing to Lara. She's just out. She's a mutant. She's been a mutant her whole life. She's been a weirdo her whole life. She's been through so much that there's no part of her that's ever tried to pass. And she gets put into this situation where she's like saving another mutant, or she thinks she's saving another mutant. And the other mutant is like, I would rather just keep passing. Thank you. And Lara kind of has this beat of like, I never really thought about that for myself. And Bucky's there too, and they actually work pretty well because they're both like second generation characters and who are secondary to iconic characters, and so that gives them their own interesting relationship. This was really good. I'm rooting for Erica Schultz. I promise to stop getting so down on this. This is why I don't look at solicits, but I do my new releases post every week, so I knew at least a week ahead of time that it was going to have Bucky. But I think Erica Schultz has a good plan, and I really hope this book is selling because the quality is there. My darling Long Cold Winter wrapped up this week. This is written by Francesca Perillo with art from Stefano Cartacelli and colors, which are amazing, from Lorenzo Scaramella. Unfortunately, this issue kind of sucked. But I've never said that this is the best comic ever. I've said it's exactly my thing that I like in D comics. The thing is, we start with this train job and it just turns into this like super bloody bloodbath. And I don't really mind that. And the colors in this are, I don't know how you even begin to decide how to color this page. Lorenzo Scaramella. I don't, how, I don't know. Also letters by Buddy Bedouin. But you realize that Stefano Cartacelli is not that good at drawing faces because we start to get faces out of masks and you realize there's a reason everybody's in a mask. He's just not great at faces. Also, well, let's keep talking. So, because I always take multiple pages from this. I love this guy, encountering death and saying, I'm not afraid of you anymore. I love the way Death is drawn. The guy's name is Peace Dog. The book should have been named Peace Dog. There's nothing about the book that has anything to do with Long Cold Winter. Francesca Perillo, what are you doing? You should have called it Peace Dog. More people would have bought it if you called it Peace Dog. If you remark it as Peace Dog, I bet you're going to sell more. But then I feel like she kind of, again, the trouble with faces. I feel like Francesca Perillo takes Peace Dog off the table a little too early in this final issue. I think she could have used him further in the plot the way she used another character and still had him meet the same end with death that he did. Spoilers. And it still would have been as satisfying. I just felt a little bit robbed of the catharsis that I wanted. I almost wanted to put the pages in a slightly different order so I could have read some of what came later first and then that scene with death earlier. But if this kind of crazy ass art appeals to you, this book is just fun to page through, and the colors, look at the like texture printed onto the clouds. This is the kind of indie book that I love. I will go fucking nuts for an indie book that's weird ass shit like this. Even if it isn't a 5 out of 5 comic book, because this is just why I like indie comics. Okay, let's continue. So speaking of indie comics, I almost missed this, and then I realized that it was on Global Comics. So I decided I don't know anything about it. I don't know who's making it. I don't know if they're good people or not. I know nothing. So it's called The Magnificent McCoys. I think the arc name is Shit Show because it's marketed as the Magnificent McCoys. And this is created by Adam Barnhart with Samfi Simeo, Wernia Sahadewa, and Letter Squids. It doesn't have a credit page, so I can only go by what's on the cover. I think for an indie book that's like one of 3, I think that's really got I think it's one of 3. I don't know. I could be making that up. But I think it got a lot of story told. It basically sets up this world where there were heroes and they faced something cataclysmic. So we've seen this happen, right? It's like very, Kingdom Come. It's very a lot of DC and Marvel worlds that we know. But there's one hero that survived, and of course he turns into an inveterate drunk, because how else do you respond to that? But now he's part of a circus with his kids. Are they all his biological children? Are they adopted? We don't know. There's somebody else in the circus with him that used to be on a super team, and she's a magical person. How is she reacting to what happened with that? We don't quite know, but we know there's something wrong with her too. And what happens now if everything that destroyed the world back then, that sent him into a spiral, comes back to destroy the world all over again? I really enjoyed it. I think for an indie number 1, I love indie superhero, and I think it really immediately placed me in this world. I understood what the world about. I understood everything about it, and I want to read more and learn more about it. So yeah, I'm into it, and it's on Global Comics, so go and read it. Metamorpho the Element Man. This was a do not finish for me. I dropped it within 3 pages, so money wasted. I just can't read this book. I can't read it. I can't read it. It's trying to do this 60s Silver Age DC thing, but the whole thing was DC Silver Age books weren't good generally, and they were the same story over and over again, and there were too many words on the page. And so if you're doing that as your bit and you're not putting a twist on it at all, you're just writing a bad comic book. So I know people are enjoying this. I don't know if they're just enjoying it because they're part of the Al Viewing Worship Club, and Steve Lieber, who is great, and Luffridge, who is great. All the people are great. Or if they genuinely like it, but I just couldn't get through it. So I think it is a drop. It is one of my few drops in DC continuity. And there's an internal, that's as far as I made it. That page is as far as I made it. And I just was like, I hate this. But that's just me. Sweet Paprika Open for Business, which is a gay, everything but the pole sex romp. It really shows some very explicit gay sex from the world of Mirka and Dolfo, but it is written by Steve Orlando and art by Emilio Pilio. I'm not reading it. Speaking of sex books, there's another one, Money Shot the Big Bang. This 0 issue I did not read because I don't really care for this book. I used to read it. Is from Tim Seeley and company, and they're basically using this to reestablish this world of space travelers. It's a funny concept. They're space travelers and physicists and doctorates who needed to fund their space travel. So they're like, what if we just make porn with all of the aliens as we travel the universe? But if you want to get into it, this 0 issue kind of reorients you to it. Then we have Monster High New Scaremester, which I did not read. Monstrous, which I historically do not enjoy, which is back for an arc right now. But now we come to the final issue of the eminently charming Murder Kingdom by Fred Van Lent, art by Chris Panda, letters from Becca Carey, possibly my favorite letterer. And I love this. It gave us a mystery. It solved it in a satisfying way. We got violence. We got a twist. It drew the whole story together. Everything made sense from the first issue to the last, and it was satisfying. I love the art. Chris Panda's figures are incredible. I just think if they're inspiration is to break through to be, like a big 2 or whatever, or even just to be doing more indie, at some point the backgrounds are just going to have to come along a little bit. It just feels like the backgrounds are a little bit underworked. And I've had that comment throughout this book, but that's a minor quibble because I love their figures so much. They all feel distinct and with personality, and they look separate from each other. The action was easy to follow. I love the big twist. If you just like silly books, if you like the idea of a murder mystery in a locked amusement park, you will enjoy this comic book. Okay, I am not reading Night of the Slashers from Magma Comics because I don't generally love Kevin Scott, and horror, as we know, is not my ballywick. However, this is another one I almost forgot that I said that I would keep reading, which was Nights. And I really, because I loved Night 13 after I read issue 1 and totally bounced right off of it. So I meant to start catching up on it and I forgot. And then it was this morning and I was in the middle of reading that other book that I had just remembered to read this morning, the I Heart Skull Crusher. I was like, oh shit. So I didn't get to read from the beginning like I said I would, but I did read this issue and it was another amazing issue. I love the writing from Wyatt Kennedy. I love the art from Luigi Formasano and the colors from Francesco Segala, who we've already talked about, I believe, on G.I. Joe. This is a really good comic book. And I think the reason I like it is because it is a little quippy. It feels derivative, not in a bad way, but derived from the lineage of Joss Whedon quippy fastness. But this arc is taking us into the history of the main character vampire that we see in the present day. So we're seeing it at some time ago, and it's just not as packed with characters, and it's not as packed with quips, and it's digging into the mythology of this magical world a little bit more, which is more what I'm into. So I think reading the world building of this flashbacky arc right now is going to let me be more excited about the early stuff. I think it just was coming at me too fast and furious at the beginning, and it was starting to feel like a hat and a hat and a hat, even though I like the art and I like the lettering, the concept of the world felt like too much of too much. Now that I'm getting into it slowly, I'm so excited. So I find this book really, really charming. It's about a version of the United States that diverged from us sometime in the 80s, I think, but also it's got magical stuff happening, and also it's going to hit an apocalypse eventually. I can't summarize more because I haven't read issues 2 through 12 yet, but I'm going to soon. I did read Our Brilliant Ruin, Horror at Crane Mansion. So this is an interesting thing by Colin Bunn. It's a comic book of a crowd-funded RPG, Our Brilliant Ruin. And of course, I love tabletop RPGs. I'm surrounded by books all up here of tabletop RPGs. And this one is interesting because it's a book about social status, both as an RPG and as a comic book. So there is monster hunting in this world because it is a world that has monsters, but the people who are the monster hunters are somehow kind of looked down upon if you do violence. And it's meant to be a game of social class, and as is this issue. So Colin Bunn with art from Christopher Mitten and colors by Pikey Hamilton, letters by Frank Sedevec. Really good letters. I really, really like them. They were throwbacky without being hard to read just because of the way that the font was chosen and the kern and everything that Frank Sedevec used. Fantastic job. So basically this plays that this is going to be like a very locked house mystery, but it's not a murder mystery. It's everybody's coming into this big mansion to court someone, but during the courting of her, a murder occurs. And what's really interesting, but also drew me in and also kept me out of this book is clearly you would understand it better if you had played or had awareness of this RPG. So at one point they're like, well, he's a monster hunter. And I eventually gathered from context that because this RPG credits social standing so much and it doesn't want you to spend a lot of time fighting, that the monster hunter, which in any other RPG would be like, cool, the monster hunter, here is like, oh, the monster hunter. And so I think there are a lot of details like that where people's like class or profession were being dropped in the script. And if you know the RPG, it probably clicked for you a lot more. I mildly enjoyed it. I think if anything, it was a good commercial for the RPG because I want to go out and buy the RPG book right now. I don't know how interested I am in the world of the story, but the art and the letters were good enough and I'm interested enough in the RPG that I think I'm going to read the second issue. Also, I like this kind of like Victorian-esque kind of artwork and era. I do think the artist Christopher Mitten struggled a little bit on faces at points. He has this very plain way that he draws his eyes where they're almost like floating right on the face and they don't look inset. And sometimes it made his eyes look a little bit wonky, but that's a minor detail. I really did find it enjoyable. And if that concept sounds cool to you, I think you'll like it. But again, I'm almost more interested in the RPG. I did look for Papa Duke this week to see if I could get it digital. It doesn't seem to be digital. It's one of these Keen Spot comics. I'm going to read one eventually if they have digital comics. I don't know if they do. I haven't been reading The Patchwork Girl of Oz, adapted by Otis Frampton. I did, however, read Peacemaker Presents the Vigilante / Eagly double feature. This is significant because it was co-plotted or story consulted by James Gunn, who is the director of Guardians of the Galaxy and steering the DC movie universe right now. And of course, he made the Peacemaker TV show, which is the whole reason we are even seeing Peacemaker in more comics right now. He's got a good voice for Peacemaker, and this worked for me so well. I loved it so much. First of all, the first story written by Tim Seeley with art by Mitch Gerads. Are you kidding me? What a amazing pedigree. But the thing that really worked for me about it is that James Gunn's humor doesn't always work for me in a movie because sometimes he lingers in a place I don't want to linger. Like sometimes he'll make a crass joke and it's quick and I laugh. I'm like, that was a good bit. But sometimes he'll make a crass joke or a violent joke or a whatever joke, or even an action moment that just sits on it too long. And I think the thing I don't like about James Gunn isn't his sense of humor, it's his sense of pacing. Sometimes when he lingers on those things too long, it makes me like roll my eyes. But the beauty of comic books as a medium is you control the speed. The comic book artist and writer can say that space denotes importance and we're going to put more space in, so it's going to make you experience this for longer, but you can decide if you're going to linger on it or whip through it. So in this, there were some kind of like body, raunchy, bloody jokes about it, but I got to decide how fast I was going to go through them. And so I lingered on the ones that were funny to me and I whipped past the ones that weren't. And in that way, a very James Gunn book, if you can feel the Gunn influence on it hard, totally worked for me. The vigilante story, this is kind of in the universe of the TV show. I don't know if they've come right out and said it's canonical to the TV show, but it's not canonical to DC Comics. It's basically got vigilante like trying to just be a good vigilante without Peacemaker, but he's so super literal and he's so lost without Peacemaker to give him a little bit of guidance here and there that he kind of like makes it out like there's a bigger villainy happening than is actually happening, and means he's going to probably kill some innocent people and it's not going to go well. And then the backup story by Rex Ogle with pencils and inks from Matteo Lolli and colors from John Callis. All of this book is lettered by Pat Brousseau. Basically has Peacemaker trying to go on a vacation to reconnect with Eagly, and the just was like punchline after punchline after punchline. I loved this book. I will absolutely still be reading. It might sneak into my top 12. It's that good. And I didn't love the Peacemaker TV show. I only watched 2 or 3 episodes. So you do not have to like the Peacemaker TV show. You don't have to love James Gunn. I think this lives in a humor zone somewhere between Guardians 1 and the Peacemaker TV show. Pulluminati, you know, sometimes you can't judge a book by its cover and sometimes you can. So this is a one-shot making an Illuminati all of Deadpool's. Why? I don't know. It doesn't tie into anything right now. It does exist in continuity. It pretty much is the next sequential Deadpool story right after the Miles Morales crossover that just wrapped last week, because it totally makes sense to read it right after that. So good on Marvel for good continuity planning, something we talked about earlier. But here's the thing. I don't love how Todd Knock draws faces. But most of the characters in this book had masks. So, okay, I'm there. This is written by Zach Gorman, by the way, colors by Rachel Rosenberg, letters by Joe Sabino. So it basically is Deadpool and Ellie get invited into this league of Deadpools. But it turns out that maybe there's competing leagues of Deadpools, and there are not many of them existing Deadpools. They're all newly made up gag Deadpools. So we have Vodpool, from vaudevillian to superhero, Swimming Pool, who has a swimming pool, Loop Pool, who only speaks in palindromes, and Valley Pool, who's pretty much Boomer, but as Deadpool. But at a point, there's a very specific point in this book where Wade and Ellie go on a mission for this group of Deadpools, and there's another group of Deadpools, and it pivots to being too high on the smell of its own farts, to coin something from the Harley Quinn book. And it just stopped being fun for me at that point. Like, to me, there's this needle right in the middle of my liking of a Deadpool comic that's like, is this funny and self-referential, or is it stupid and self-referential? And I think by the end, this just was getting by too much on the playful quality of introducing more Deadpools that they themselves were gags without actually having gags in the plot or in the story. It was a fine one-shot. It looked okay, but it's a fine breather from the amazing Cody Ziegler run of Deadpool. It just wasn't significant. Power Girl, the penultimate issue. So I went back and reread some Power Girl as I was reading this to just remind myself that I really like this book, but it's just not enough about Power Girl. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it reads like a broken book, because Leah Williams has this great supporting cast. She's got great plots. She's got funny script, but she never taught us who Power Girl is. There's some hints of it, like around like issue 10, 11, 12, 13, but we just never get all the way into her character. So seeing her fight these triumvirate of baddies from space who are trying to take over the earth, like, they're really designed well. I love David Baldian's art for them. The action is really fun, although it gets a little hard to follow at points, but I just think the craft on this book is really high. Great colors from Romulo Fajardo Jr., always great letters from Becca Carey, very readable. But I just found that I didn't really understand. I didn't do another page, who Power Girl was. So the only real fun part for me on this was the cutaway scenes to the side character, Mariposa, who was a reporter for the Daily Planet, but Power Girl just poached her to work at her own company. And Mariposa is basically like, well, I'm not a superhero, so do you want to play board games while they do superheroing? That was funny. It was so funny, and I'm invested in who she is. It feels like I'm invested in all of the supporting characters in this book. I think Leah Williams did a great job with Omen as the supporting character. I would read a whole Omen comic book right now. I think she did a great job with Steel. I think she did a great job with redeveloping some of these Asgard characters that were originally debuted in Becky Cloonan's run on Wonder Woman with Michael Conrad. But all of that well-defined stuff, there's no well-defined Power Girl at the center. So it's like I can't even be sad that this book is getting canceled after next issue because I don't have a character to be sad about. So this Power Lords thing, for those of you who don't remember, it's part of this Nacelverse, which this guy has basically bought up all of this expired cartoon and toy property that basically like had cartoons that didn't, or toys that didn't go anywhere. And he's trying to staple them all together to make a universe out of them, which is cute. It's cute. But if this is the quality we can expect from these 3-issue miniseries, I think it's earned a permanent drop for me. So look, I liked the first 2 issues of this because it was, what's my favorite word? Toyetic. It really felt like this is a story about action figures that you don't know about. So it really felt like when one of them would like squirt water, you're like, oh, the water blast hit me. And you're like, oh, that action figure probably had a water blast. But it stopped working for me here because it didn't feel like there was a point to this story. Like if you have to remember, these are toys that we've never played with. So you can't just tell, you've either got to go super, super deep and deconstruct who they are and make us care for them as people. Or I think you've got to tell us like an origin story about them that's so good that it makes us say like, I wish I had these toys right now to play with. This to me was, it threaded a needle through the middle, but it didn't actually get threaded because it's not really an origin story and it doesn't really tell us anything about the characters. They basically all get together again and shout at each other and then save the day. So I didn't really come away from it understanding the characters. I don't really come away understanding why it's so important that this world exists now with all these toy properties stapled together. I mean, it's fun to make comics, but it didn't really tell me that there was like a beating heart at the center of this idea of the Nacelverse. And I think that that's very dangerous when you're trying to staple together a bunch of things that people have no nostalgia for because nobody actually remembers them. So I don't know if I would give another Nacelverse book a chance because it just felt like this book didn't go anywhere. And I think you've got to have a bigger idea if given this conceit of reviving toys that nobody's remembers into action heroes, there's just got to be a bigger idea. I didn't read Power Rangers Prime. I'm not a Power Rangers person. I didn't read the Powerpuff Girls, although maybe I am a Powerpuff Girl person. We'll never know. I did read the first issue of Mike Barron's Private American. It was, well, let me start with a description first. So Mike Barron has this end note in the first issue. It's on Global Comics, so you can go read it if you want. That basically is like, I'm just trying to write what I was writing on Punisher from the 80s. I'm not trying to take a political stance. I just think this particular hero would be against drugs crossing the border, but still want immigrants to be treated fairly, right? And so apparently, I don't pay attention to a lot of comic news. Apparently, there was a whole backlash against this book where it like got removed from Kickstarter and like all these liberal things, or like you're writing a right-wing book. And Mike Barron's note at the beginning, and this is issue 3 of 3, I only read the first issue, was basically like, this is not about a political ideology. This is about what a character like this would do at the border. Whether I believe that or not, I don't know. What I can say about the book is it was a hot mess alert. If you're trying to get us to like this Punisher character and like sympathize with his feelings about what's happening on the border, give us this character. Let us follow him. Part of what made early Punisher by Mike Barron so compelling is that we spent a lot of time with Frank. We understood like why he had the opinions that he had. And then we would spend enough time with the bad guys that we really wanted them to die. And then Punisher would come in and kill them. He seems to have forgotten these lessons because the first issue of this, it just was all over the fucking place. I couldn't tell who was doing what or why they were doing it or what was going on at the border or who was angry about what. It was just a hot mess. It was a hot mess. So I think if you're going to come out and say like, oh, read my comic more closely to see between the lines of what may or may not be a political opinion, you've got to have a comic that's worth reading closely. And this, unfortunately, was not. We're going to go to the, I think, R's or S's, and then I'll take another quick break. Private Dance Down South, yet another cheeky comic from the world of Pat Shand. And apparently there's an ongoing book, Private Dance, and this is just one of them going down south. I'm sorry. I maybe should have taken some time to research the cheeky comics more. I did not. I apologize. I did not read Prodigal Son a couple weeks ago, issue number 1. Western's not really my category, so I'm not going to read it just to dislike it. I do not read Radiant Black because I did read it and it is in my category, but I do dislike it because I think it's a bad comic book and always has been. I dropped Red Before Black because I could not understand what the point of this Stephanie Phillips kind of a mob book, kind of a military book, kind of a supernatural book was. I did read Red Hulk though. If you recall a few weeks ago, I was absolutely obsessed with the first issue of this Benjamin Percy Red Hulk, with art from G.F. Shaw, colors from Brian Valenza, letters from Corey Petit. This issue followed a very similar pattern to the first issue, I think to its detriment, and I'll explain why. The first issue had Thunderbolt Ross locked up, and so he couldn't access being Red Hulk. So the whole issue is kind of edging us to be like, is it time? Is it time? Do we get to Red Hulk? And over that time, it turned out that Thunderbolt Ross, not as Red Hulk, was actually very interesting, right? And then we finally got Red Hulk, and it was interesting. This issue inverts that, where we get Red Hulk at the beginning, and then he's gone away, and we have to rely on Machine Man and Deathlock for all the action. I like Machine Man and Deathlock, but it just felt like flipping it backwards to give us Red Hulk at the beginning and then deprive us of him and I understand why, because the idea was like he couldn't be Red Hulk until he absorbed some kind of radiation, even a little bit of solar radiation. So they have to get out of this prison Doom keeps them in. But for me, as the reader who got so excited by getting to Red Hulk at the end of the first issue, it kind of inverting that to be like, we've used up the Red Hulk, now we've got to escape without him, kind of made me go like, oh shucks, that's not what I signed up for. So I still think it's actually a pretty good comic book. The art from, I think I've never seen G.F. Shaw draw in the style before him. I love Brian Valenza's coloring of him. I just don't know that this issue found the same thing that was exciting as the first issue, because having Thunderbolt Ross not be Red Hulk also really removed him from having agency, and it put a lot of the agency either in the air or on Machine Man and Deathlock. So as other people started getting injured and we were trying to break out, I just felt like there was no character who was primarily in control of the plot, which is something that you've heard me say again and again. It does annoy me. So speaking of late breaking, this is an OGN, an original graphic novel, 300 pages, reversal. It could have been single issues because let me take a step back. I usually don't look at collected editions for this show but I'm aware of all the collected editions that came out from Marvel and DC and Image because I do my new releases post. So if there's an OGN from one of them, I would know. But since I don't do a new releases post for all the rest of outside of the big three, I don't know generally what an OGN is. And then I only filter for the show looking for single issues. So I totally miss OGNs, and it's something I've got to fix. Because I randomly got an ad on social media from Dark Horse Comics about this, and I was like, ooh, I often enjoy Alex DeCampi. This looks cool. Let me check it out. Well, guess what? I am debating if I can put an OGN in my top 12, even though it didn't release a single issues, because I am obsessed with this book, Reversal. Script by Alex DeCampi, line art from Skylar Partridge, colors from Kelly Fitzpatrick, letters, Hassan Otsman is back. I love the concept of this so much. It's a magical world. Magic just exploded into our real world. So there's a ministry of magic basically who's keeping track of it, but it killed a lot of people. It hurt a lot of people. People are trying to decide if they're going to stick around or not in this town that's now adjacent to the magic. So almost similar to the story behind Assorted Crisis Events. But then the daughter of one of the main scientists, and this is just the first 40 pages because I only read the first 80 because that's how much time I had, finds an artifact that lets her kind of Shazam style turn into somebody from the magical world who maybe would be better at fighting all these magical things and maybe even turning them back than any of these scientists would be. But she's got to convince her mom to trust her and this weird and kind of hot guy that she now shares a body with. So it's got great family drama with the scientist and her kids. It's got great magical world drama, very, very similar to Assorted Crisis Events. But then also the art is so good. And then it's got all this comedy of her daughter, and her daughter has a chronic condition that leaves her really, really tired. So it plays a lot with the idea of she's like, I don't know if I can go for a walk today. I don't know if I can make it through math class today. So part of her loves having this Shazam-like ability to turn into this super hot magical guy because she's like, I can walk as far as I want. I can fight monsters, and I'm experiencing life from this able-bodied body, but I'm still me and I don't have to be him. And then I get to go back and be myself afterwards and be tired after I've had this amazing adventure. I'm going to keep reading it. It's 300 pages. It seems like each chapter is about 40 pages. So I read the first 2 chapters. If I decided to let this into my top 10 as an OGN, this would have been my number 4 book of the week based on my algorithm. Highly recommended. I will tell you next. I guess I'll just keep reading it. And next week I'll talk more about if I like the rest of it. But the first 80 pages, man, fantastic. And this art is incredible. Okay. Rogue the Savage Land by my beloved Tim Seeley. This is really turning into like a breakout starring role for artist Zulema Scotto Lavina. She hasn't done a ton of comics already. and she draws the ever-living hell out of the Savage Land, Rogue in a bikini, Khazar, Magneto. It all looks great. And Rachel Rosenberg, I would never have been able to tell you that it was her coloring. This is not, I don't know that she has a color look, but this is not a color look I associate with her. With this like really super saturated color, not a lot of shading at all, or really just like a little bit of like a lightness on Rogue's face in the center, but a lot of the foreground and background are kind of just solid colors. That's not something I usually associate with Rachel Rosenberg. But I will say that Tim Seeley's, here's what I'll say. I think you could get a whole Rogue ongoing out of this Savage Land period of her in the story of Uncanny X-Men 269 to 275. We could get 30 issues out of it. We don't know what she did. She was there for weeks. Tim Seeley appreciates that, but he only has a limited series. But what he's doing is he's basically speed running like a concept for a story in every issue. So this one is kind of like zombie dinosaurs, sort of, which is fine. And it contributes to the overall plot, but it just, I would have rather spent more time focusing on an overarching story, which I know is weird for me because I'm usually the one that's like compress, one-shot stories. But I think if you're already in a limited series, I don't know if I want issue 3 of your limited series to be a highly compressed one-shot story. I think I want to be spending time with the characters. There are some good Rogue beats in here. I still think Tim Seeley is writing a fantastic Rogue voice. And if I'm being honest, I really wish this would somehow get extended to like an ongoing throwback Rogue series because I think it's got the goods. I think all the creative is on it is really strong. I was just disappointed that this issue told such a facile one-stop story that I just wasn't that interested in when it just feels like we could have arcs and arcs of this world. So it's kind of like a backhanded compliment. Like, this book is so good that I didn't like this issue for not doing all the things that I love about this book. I don't know how. Oh, and that's the end of the R's. So we're going to take a little breather. I'm going to take a little drink, and then we are going to come back for the rest. So we ended on G's. So anything that's from H's and on will be new. Did I see Graham Norton losing it over Absolute Batman? No. Graham Nolan. It would be funnier if it was Graham Norton. Pretty lame that both of Bane's dads turned out to be right-wing nut jobs. No, I did not see that at all. Definitely agree on the disposability of comics. Quick question from James, the media announcer. I'm grabbing some older 90s superhero compendiums to get a group of that era, and I've set my sights on Wildcats and Starman. Oh, well, I mean, Wildcats is never farther than arm's reach away from me, James. Wildcats, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's the best of Jim Lee. Jim Lee never drew as well at Marvel, and he never drew as well after. That's the book. And in terms of building a whole world of continuity, Wildcats and Stormwatch, I don't know that anybody's ever kicked off a superhero world that intrigued me as much. And it's not just nostalgia talking, because I reread it about 8 years ago and I still liked it that much. So I highly recommend that first Wildcats compendium, especially for how affordable it is, for how many issues are in it. I've never read Starman. I'm debating if I'm going to get the compendium or if I just want to read it digital. So I can't comment on that. Bunkmaster B would never dream of leaving a Crisis stream early. Well, you do leave early, but then you come back at the end. So it's like it's like when you take attendance, and they take attendance at the beginning of the college class, and you're there and you raise your hand, then you go out and like get some bubble tea, and then you come back at the end, and then you get the assignment. I feel like that's kind of what you're doing. James Abel, Harley Quinn 49. I don't understand this writing. No, I liked it. Last issue was all about Harley and Ivy, and now it's called polyamory, James, and maybe we need to talk about our therapist about that too. But the question is, did you read the Fartacular? Hello Darkness, Cruel Angel says, no clue. The late diamond shipment to my LCS had variants, but was missing all the regular A covers. Interesting. Some reliable Mark Russell hate from my friend Ryan Wilson. People taking my word on the Harley Fart comic. Bob Hobbit Rabbit can only apparently talk about the Harley Fart comic in emojis. Apparently I did some nice ground. Yeah, my voice is already hurting from working on this Martian Manhunter song, so I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get through it at the end. James Abel, Justice League Unlimited 5. Deja vu, reading this in Absolute Martian Manhunter the same day. Did love the ending. Bugmaster, not a Zach Thompson fan, and have tried multiple times. Yeah, it's not that I hate him. I think he's probably pretty cool from every interview I've read with him, but I've never read a comic that worked for me. It's not even a script thing like Spurrier. It's just at the conceptual level. Once I hook into what his concept is, I'm like, oh, you should just keep that, which is fine. We don't all have to love everything. And I think it's powerful to understand that certain writers write in a vibe that is not into you. Pittyma is waiting for the Jeff plushie. Also, I think Kelly Thompson in her Substack, plugging it once again, was saying there's a cool limited edition Jeff statuette, and it's like ripped right from the comic. It looks exactly like him. Have I read Jim Starlin's Marvel work? I know more of late 70s, early 80s Starlin than 90s. I guess I've read a fair amount of 90s Starlin because Kid Crisis and I read Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War, but I don't know that I've read like all of Starlin. I wonder how much Infinity Watch or Landy's previous story. Well, I think Landy's thing kind of winks ever so gently at Starlin's Infinity Watch, which I do have all of. It's a bind, and then they put trade paperbacks out of it. So now I have 2 copies. But it's very much its own thing. It's very much about this current world where the stones are not just being guarded by the people, they are the people. But it's Landy. Landy is very reverent of Marvel continuity, so I do think he's paying homage to it to a degree. Lance McNair, Tamara Bonvillain is my favorite colorist in comics. She's more than half of what works about Dan Moore's art. Lance, you know, we're 2 Madrox dupes separated by time and space. We often agree on these. Tell us the reveal, says Ryan. I will not. But James Abel, for some reason, is still reading Kill Train. Once again, this gets dumb and dumber, but I can't stop reading. It's like watching a bad horror movie. Also, Laura Kinney, Wolverine #4, Road Trip. I enjoyed getting out of New York for once, and this issue gave me some Incredible Hulk TV Bill Bixby vibes. I love the way you think about comics, James. Cruel Angel saying you actually like the Assassin Road Trip. I control the radio. That was great. I laughed so hard. What music does she listen to, right? Does she listen to like goth, like wavy music, like not from the goth clubs I used to go to in the 90s? I sure hope so. That's what I think that she should. Nice to see the creative team mentioning choosing shorter story arcs on the letter page. Bunkmaster B read issue 1 of Long Cold Winter, and I'm reasonably sure it was written by an 8-year-old after getting super hyper from eating too much candy and bashing their action figures together, and that's why I like it. Okay. James Abel read the end of Murder Kingdom. It was here. Maybe the big reveal was just okay. The journey to get here was better. Yeah, I think the journey was better than the whole thing. Kane, for some reason, I feel like you're really going to like Brilliant Ruin. I don't know. I just have a thought. I have a vibe. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you might like it. Okay, what's this now about Christopher Mitten being on a new book? It looks like I need to rewind this and figure out what book I'm picking up. Yeah, I say it so fast, I don't even know which book it was. I just described why Deadpool rarely works for you. Yeah, that balance between funny self-referential and stupid self-referential. The dial, the audience-o-meter is always waving over here. Ryan Wilson, by the last episode of Peacemaker, is so tired of the jokes that I wasn't even laughing anymore. I felt like I was just getting the same jokes over and over again. Well, then you might not like the comic because it is more of those jokes. But again, my thing tends to be about the pacing. Although Ryan adds, and I think this is very perceptive, my biggest problem with a show like Peacemaker is when you have people that are goofy and incompetent in your universe, then it dumbs down the entire universe. Pity Ma did enjoy Private American, so maybe I'm not the only one to trust on all of these things. Bunkmaster B is both a Power Rangers and a Powerpuff Girl person. And Matt H. glad to hear Rogue Savage Land is good. The only other good X stories I've heard out of this are Storm. Hopefully it keeps going. Well, wait until we get to the end of the alphabet. And Bunkmaster does like a good boba. Me too. All right, let me open the last PDF worth of covers because it is time to get to the end of the alphabet. And then if I have any voice left over after my Screamo singing, I will play you a song that I wrote about Absolute Martian Manhunter, which is something I've said I was going to do since 2012. I had this original idea in 2012 that I was going to write songs about comics every month. And then I never did it. And I just did it for the first time in 2025. But we're going to talk more about that later. So here we go. I read Savage Dragon this week. Why? Not only because I'm always on my classic Image bullshit, but because this promised to be the first of 4 issues that are about the kid characters from Savage Dragon. And I'm like, well, clearly we can't have sex in a book about the kids character. Not that I don't like sex, but sometimes it feels like Savage Dragon is just like this weird kink book, and there's like not any story you can get without avoiding the kink. The reason I like this, first of all, I just loved the way Eric Larson drew this. I love he's really leans into his Kirby influences. I like how he draws kids and younger characters. I love how he draws this tiger person. I love how much time he puts into getting the pattern on his pants exactly folded in the way the folds of the pants would fold. I found the art very, very charming. And then they're in San Francisco climbing up this street that's so steep that it has stairs along the side of it. And I've actually been on the street in San Francisco, so I really enjoyed it. This is the comic that made me think of my Moment of Krisis today, because it has basically a certain musky person basically doing their salute verbatim. Oh God, I didn't mean to do the salute. I was just gesturing to the screen. That was not me doing the salute, Jesus. And they visit some violence on him, and it has this very funny trope of every time anybody is spouting this like ultra right-wing stuff, it just has it in brackets like right-wing nonsense, more right-wing nonsense. It was really funny, and it shows to me that maybe Eric Larson has gotten a little too addicted to making this his goofy sex book, because with without the goofy sex, still with doing things that are weirdly subversive and bloody and wincy and borderline cringy, I actually laughed and had a good time. So maybe I just need to enjoy the genitals waggling in the wind that he usually has every issue, because I actually, for me, who likes classic Image, I'm not saying all of you are invited to enjoy this. For me, I enjoyed this issue of Savage Dragon. Then we come to the seasons number 3. So expectations are the thief of joy. I just had to let go of my expectations for this and just experience it. It's going to move as slowly as it's going to move. And so this whole issue is basically just about these two sisters being in a fight. Spring is like, why won't you listen to me? There's bad stuff. The murder carnival is here. Our sister was abducted. And Winter is like, why are you so weird? Why can't you just do your job? Why can't we just be sisters? And then Spring is like, oh, why can't you do something other than just art? Why am I paying the rent? I'm a teenager, right? That's the comic. So we're just going to experience this as slow as it goes. We're going to love the art from Paul Azaceta. We're going to love the colors by Matheus Lopez. We're going to read the readable letters from Russ Wooten. And you know what? If Rick Remender wants to take his time with like a cute, slow book, great. That's why good. That's variety from Rick Remender. Also, I'll say this. To me, this feels like a Terry Moore book that maybe doesn't understand the pacing that Terry Moore does. Terry Moore, his books about all female protagonists, they are slow and they are slice of life, but he knows how to give us just enough of development and an overarching plot that looms over them every issue that it feels like we've gone somewhere. I don't know if that's Rick Remender's typical idiom, so I do feel him struggling against it, but Rick Remender's a pro. I think he can get there. I have never had a turnaround on a creator the way I've had this turnaround on Rick Remender over the past 3 months of doing this reading. I think he's in a new golden era. There's a reason I did that giant generator guide. It's not just for the clicks. I don't think I'm going to get like 1,000 clicks on a giant generator guide when it goes public. I really admire what Rick Remender is doing. I admire the way he treats the artists that he works with as partners and friends. I admire the scope of the books and the stories he's trying to tell. I admire that they're not all about cynicism anymore, which maybe that's his worldview changing, or maybe that's just his taste in comics changing, but they excite me. So even though I felt like I was on a verge of a drop on this, I feel like I've turned a corner on Rick Remender, and now I'm like into it. I'm so into it, I almost want to go back and reevaluate his past stuff I didn't like as much with this vision of the present day Rick Remender, who I'm really enjoying and respecting so much. Oh, and I loved this was fun. So there was a little bit of conflict in this, and at a point, the conflict is with somebody we think is a normal person, but then they turn into this like crazy cartoon gremlin. I loved it. So that also was what got me to continue reading this book, because I was like, I want to read more about this weird little round-headed yellow cartoon gremlin. Okay. Shadow of the Golden Crane is the other Hellboy universe book out this weekend. This one is interesting because this is set in the past of the Hellboy universe. So Hellboy's still alive in this. This is like one of those throwback EB books, kind of. I understand what this is now, and I don't know if it's for me, but I still enjoy it. I don't love Michael Ivan Oeming's art and how like weird and misshapen everything is. It's very fun and cartoony if you like that kind of cartoon. And I realize now what Chris Robertson is doing as the story here is he's just telling the story of artifacts. So this is not going to be the story of the people in the present day, which is the past of Hellboy. It's the story of them uncovering these artifacts that are demonically possessing people, and then kind of seeing the story of the artifacts. So it's almost like an anthology book in a Hellboy retcon book wrapper, which is fine. It's just never going to be my favorite thing. But for what that is, and if that sounds attractive to you, it was fine. This was, I don't know about you all. I thought this was high art. So this is Solomon Kane, #1, The Serpent Ring. I think the whole series is The Serpent Ring, by Patrick Zurcher, writing and art and colors, and Richard Starking on letters. This was phenomenal. It had this feeling of like, you know, when you watch a really complex movie or read a really complex book, especially made me think of The Three Musketeers, not just because of the period, but also the experience of like watching that movie. It takes time to settle into all the characters are and who the factions and everything, but you never feel like there's nobody to root for or it's uninteresting. You're just like, there's a little bit of a fog or a veil over the world. And you realize that you have to settle into the world and learn about it. And I think comic books don't often do that well, because they often just want to jump us in, but then not give us that fog that we want to clear away so we can see more of this world. Zurcher perfects that on this comic book. It's drawn so beautifully. There's so many moving parts. There's people, on the ground in Africa. There's this Jewish scholar living, in Venice. There's so many parts, moving parts. They're all clearly connected. And Solomon Kane is going to be what connects them. I could have read this for an hour. I think as it was, it took me like 25 or 30 minutes to read, which is unheard of for a single issue with me. But the art had so much to linger on. I've never seen Patrick Zircher draw like, and I love Patrick Zircher's art. His Savage Avengers art was amazing. I've never seen him draw like this. The art was incredible, but his script was really good. It just, at first it held me a little bit at arm's length, but the more and more I paid attention to it and like dug into it, the more I got into it. I don't know. Solomon came from Adam. To me, he's just another Robert E. Howard character that I've never read anything about. I will be here for the next issue of this. This was very close to being my indie pick of the week. I was really drawn in, really drawn in. I didn't read Standstill. This is the last issue from Lee Luffrich's comic about an asshole who gets the power to stop time. It's really interesting art-wise, and I think it's a really cool story. Just didn't really grab me in issue number 1. I might go back for it at some point, though. I didn't read Star Trek Defiance. As we know, I don't read Star Trek comics, only Star Wars comics. So this is Fear of the Jedi, number 2, which is wrapping up our High Republic period by Kevin Scott. This was a little bit of a mess for me. There were some cool fights, but it kind of just feels like I'm reading a Wikipedia summary of the plot. And the plot was like, this space blockade ends, so now they can go to Naboo and encourage the fighters on Naboo, but now they've also got to go somewhere else. It's just, Kevin Scott really has not worked for me very well in a lot of these Star Wars High Republic comics. It feels like as soon as I get a head of steam going and I start to like them, I get taken out a little bit. I mean, the art on this was pretty good. I'll give it that, by Marika Cresta, colors by Jim Campbell, letters by Ariana Maher, but it's so uninteresting. And this High Republic era held so much promise, and it just feels like Lucasfilm really missed the boat on it across multiple types of media. Although I do like the adventure stuff from Dark Horse, but I just couldn't really get interested in this one. Speaking of things that missed the boat, so this Star Wars Rise of Skywalker book by Jody Hauser. Jody Hauser can only do so much to adapt the script. And the thing that she's doing that I'm enjoying, and I said it last month too, is she's taking us into the minds of these characters a little bit more. She's giving us a little bit more of their motivation than we couldn't have gotten in the movie. I do think that's improving the movie, but she's still working from the bullet points of this movie script. And so the movie, which I've never seen, seems like it is kind of just the MacGuffin hunt, which, to be fair, so are some of the original Star Wars movies, but it doesn't really seem like it's very motivated. Like, it just feels like our characters like run and they get somewhere, and then it's like run that other way. That said, Will Sliney does a great job. Some of the likenesses he loses a little bit. He's very good at Ray's likeness, Daisy Ridley. Sometimes he loses Adam Driver's likeness, as he does here at the bottom of this page as Kylo Ren, but sometimes it's good. But honestly, I'm enjoying it just because I don't have to watch the terrible movie, and it's kind of like a Cliff Notes version. And I think it actually helps the relatability and the interesting quality of this plot for Jody Hauser to take us into the minds of these characters. I've never read any Street Fighter comics. Are they worth reading? Do any of you read Street Fighter? I never really had the idea that Street Fighter had continuity. I mean, I played the hell out of Street Fighter 2. It was one of my favorite games for Super Nintendo, but I never really fell in love with it. But then they made Street Fighter toys that were the same as G.I. Joe's. They were from the same line as G.I. Joe's. So then I was like, wait, there's story for Street Fighter. So I got into it via toys. Is it interesting? I don't know. If one of you knows, please chime in the chat or in the comments. So now we come to Superman. I wonder if Kenneth Crilly is still here. This is Superman 24. And this is kind of like a place you can jump in, but I would still say read this series from the beginning because it's been excellent. This one gave me mixed feelings. First of all, because it had Eddie Barrows and Iber Ferreira on art with colors from Alejandro Sanchez. Eddie Barrows is usually pretty reliable, but the art got a little bit gawky at points. I didn't pick any of the gawky pages because there were a lot of great pages, but there were a few pages where hands were not in scale to the rest of the body. There were a few pages where heads were turned in a way that didn't look sense. It just looked like, but the thing is, it's not like he's underworked because his art is so shaded and colored and defined. I just think he sometimes set up some awkward stuff. The other awkward thing, though, is that we've been building up this good Lex. Here's what I've learned. I like living in the world where Lex Luthor is always good. I just like Lex Luthor as a good, morally ambiguous good guy. He's lost his memories, so it's really an easy sell, and he's starting to regain his memories, and this is playing the idea that actually if he's regaining his memories, we have to start treating him like a bad guy again. But then somebody else kind of breaks bad too, and it just made me be like, oh, I know everything has to change, but I liked this super core status quo. And it feels like the shift happened really fast and it didn't feel super motivated by what happened previously, but I do really like this issue because I think it was a good script by Joshua Williamson, and I loved Lois going on her own adventure as Superwoman with the Creeper. Basically, it's a Justice League adventure, and it has a bunch of Justice League characters, including Mr. Terrific in the background of it, but Lois just hangs out with Creeper, and that combination actually really worked for me. So I liked it. I have to let go of my expectations of what I want the plot to do. I'm not in the driver's seat. Expectations are the thief of joy. If I let go of that, it was a good issue with a little bit of gawky artwork. Yeah, like this page, fantastic. Superman being like, why is there a gun with my logo on it, Mercy? And Mercy's being like, this is my private lab. And Superman's like, private lab? It's a private lab. And what's the name on the building? Supercore. So like that, there were really a lot of good scenes in it. I do not read Saturday Morning Adventures, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, nor do I read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles X Naruto. I don't know what Naruto is. I mean, I know conceptually what it is, but I've never read or watched. I don't read The Terminator by Declan Shalvey. I do read Thunderbolt's Doomstrike. So, you know, it's interesting to watch the sentiment kind of turn on Jackson Jackson Lanzing and Colin Kelly over the past few years. I feel like they were darlings for a little while when they were underdogs. And then ever since they're Guardians of the Galaxy, it feels like people are really soured on them. And I try to figure out the why behind it. And the thing I keep coming back to is they mine continuity as if that has value on its own. And they sometimes lose the thread of the human story in the continuity. And that was really true here. You know, Bucky went through something really traumatic last issue, which is basically Red Skull put the blame on Bucky for blowing up his hometown and killing tens of thousands of people. And so now Bucky has become obsessed with bloodying the nose of did I say Red Skull? I meant Dr. Doom. Bloodying the nose of Dr. Doom and like making him feel it, but in such a way that he's being stupid in his planning. And he admits that. The story's about that, right? But then it kind of tilts into this big train job. And in the train job, we have US Agent, but we also have Sharon Carter, but we also bring in the Ghost Rider that we just introduced in Hellhunters, but it isn't even over yet from Flo K. Johnson, but then we easily dispatch him in the same issue, so he's not even going to stick around. And I was kind of just like, stop grasping at all these straws of continuity and just tell us the Bucky story. You've got the right thread. You've got the right emotion. This artist, Tommaso Bianchi, is a real find. I really, really love both how he draws people in conversation and action. Great colors from Yen Nitro. This is not an art team I'm familiar with, and I think they're killing it. But Jackson and Lansing, it just feels like stop with the constant justifying of every toy you take out of the toy box and just like stick on the emotional beat for a minute. That's where this story is. It makes sense to me that they're also writing Star Trek. I bet the Star Trek fans love all the continuity stuff they pull. And I think it's probably really enjoyable, but this flitting around from continuity pull to continuity pull, it's what they've been doing on every book I've read by them. And at some point you just have to settle down and make sure you deliver the emotional beat of the story. Rewarding us with carefully tied knots of continuity is not going to be the thing that makes your series memorable. That's not what makes a comic book great. Ultimate Spider-Man. This issue was great, but it was a little disposable, but it was great. So this has David Messina filling in on art with colors still from Matthew Wilson. And the thing I love is that Messina has a very different style from Marco Cicchetto, but he draws a very, very obviously drawn from Cicchetto's face for Peter. And I think that kind of centered me in it. Like he draws his facial hair the same way, his facial proportions the same way. And so since that gave me literally a face to look at, like there's all this science behind like things that look like faces look friendly to us. That's why they make certain appliances look almost like they have eyes or a face. Like the fact that I was able to say, okay, that's the Peter Parker I know from this series allowed me to really fall in love with this art. Plus David Messina is just a great artist. Then this encounter with Sandman in the middle of the desert, it almost plays out like a video game where like Spider-Man's trying to do the right thing over and over again and he keeps failing. And so, but the thing that I'm not super sure about is that Hickman has really advanced to the fact that like his kid is just full on also going to be Spider-Man. Like we've just going to have Spider-Man Jr., which I just think happened so fast. Like at first I thought that he was just filling in for his dad to use the suit while his dad was away. So it wasn't obvious that his dad had been abducted the past couple of issues, but now we're just playing that he's also going to be Spider-Man. I kind of was like, whoa. But that's the fun of this book, I think, is that like it's always a month of what happened in the life of the Parkers. And so, you know what? There's probably 30 issues we could have read of those adventures, and they didn't happen because Hickman's keeping it moving. He built this continuity. He built this continuity to solve for the things that were problems in X-Men, whereas everybody just wanted to linger on the comfort core of it. And he's like, well, we're not doing comfort core here because every book advances a month. And you know what? It's smart, because if he wanted to, if this continues to be so popular, he could absolutely give somebody else the chance to go back and write all of the in-between stories between all these issues, and it would totally work. So I love the way it's constructed. This was a one-shot. You could pick it up even if you haven't been reading Ultimate Spider-Man, but that's true of almost any issue of this book. And the fight with Sandman was really, really spectacular, and just amazing colors from Matthew Wilson here on the spider suits, both the traditional red and blue and the black and white. Next, we come to Ultimate Wolverine. Oh no, I think I forgot to put a book in the mix. Oh no. So actually what's next is Universal Monsters The Mummy, which I guess I didn't do any interiors from, because I also almost missed that one. And Ultimate, yeah, no, maybe it'll be after this. Maybe it'll be after Ultimate Wolverine. I don't know. I can't alphabetize right now. I've got a timer running. No, I actually don't. So Ultimate Wolverine, here's the mixed feelings I have about Ultimate Wolverine. It feels like a comic that is very self-conscious of the fact that our Ultimate X-Men comic right now is not really the X-Men that everybody wants. And so everybody will buy this if it teases doing Ultimate X-Men characters. So this issue teased it was going to have Ultimate Gambit and Ultimate Kitty Pryde, so everybody gets hype. The actual story, I'm not sure it's about anybody. It starts out introducing Ultimate Gambit and Ultimate Kitty Pryde, and it also has Ultimate Wolverine, who's not really a character. He's just an automaton with a mission. There's some really good action. There's some really good art. But we get to the end of the story, and I don't feel like we learned a whole lot. We learned that this Logan did have a life before he was this Winter Soldier, and that it wasn't a life that was just like 60 years ago, because even Gambit and Kitty seem to know him in some way. So that's really interesting, and that thread is interesting, but it does kind of just feel like we were baited and switched into buying an issue that was kind of just a bombastic action issue that was going to promise us to spend more time with the Ultimate X-Men. And that is my one concern about this book, which is a very good book with very good craft. I feel that it's often going to feel bait and switchy because the other Ultimate X-Men book is not giving us anything X-Men. So this has the ability every month to dangle like, it's Ultimate this, it's Ultimate that, all X-Men stuff that you love, and we're going to fall for it. But at some point, it's hard to tell a story about a character who's an unwilling villain that has no inner life. And this Wolverine has no inner life. So we're going to have to get there eventually. It's working for me as a book so far. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying there's a limit to how many months you can do this. And I think it also kind of did this last month. So if it does this again next month, then we're going to be in a trend. Okay. And this is, I mean, the art, again, I do not like the letters. I have not liked the letters. I don't think they're great letters. The lettering effects, that is. It just doesn't fit the tone of the book at all. And the same problem on this page that I had with issue 1, but the action was really, really cool. Okay, I do have the mummy stuff. Okay, for the first time in my life, since I came back to reading comic books in 2010, and when I read comic books in the 1990s, I'm reading comic books and not reading Uncanny X-Men. Maybe it was good. Tell me if it was good. I like getting my blood pressure up and screaming for your entertainment, but I'm not going to read a comic that's just going to make me sad. And I think that's where you see me dropping some comics. I'll drop a comic when I don't even think I can get angry in an entertaining way for you anymore. And unfortunately, until Gail Simone is off this title, I think this title might be there. But I did read The Mummy. This is really interesting, Universal Monsters The Mummy, because it's by Faith Erin Hicks, who has really surprised me as a writer on this, because she is like a YA graphic novelist. So I'm like, ooh, it's going to be really cool to see her do horror and, you know, writing and drawing for herself with Lee Loveridge on colors. But then it's just a YA story. Like, I don't know. I get that the Mummy story of the Universal Monster version of The Mummy is a story about star-crossed lovers, and there's a way to approach that from the modern day with kid characters, but there's nothing scary in it. I was like, scare me, Universal Monsters. And I get that Universal Monsters aren't, it's not about like horror. Like the Universal Monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, their movies are classics, and they're horror classics, but they're really suspense classics. They're not horror in the modern day sense of like horror's got to be bloody and scary. But this just felt like another Faith Erin Hicks YA comic. Nothing about it felt Mummy to me. It was well done. It was well constructed. It was well written. I enjoyed it. It just felt like she could have just gone and done this on her own. It didn't feel like she needed the Universal Monsters license to accomplish this. I'm always on my Vampirella shit. And this has been relaunched with a new #1, but with the same team. Christopher Priest, and art and colors by Aaron Gunduz, with letters from Willie Schubert. I have said in past weeks, and I've felt for years, that Christopher Priest is punching down at Vampirella, and that makes this no fun to read. This was different. It brings us Vampirella as a single mom, which is the thing she's been fighting for. And it's basically saying being a single mom is hard, which I don't think is a punch down at Vampirella in specific. It's being a punch down of like, yeah, you think it's easy to be this superhero who goes out and drinks the blood of people who are dealing drugs, and that's how you get paid, by taking drug dealers off the streets. Well, that might seem easy to you, but parenting as a single mom in a rundown apartment by yourself, that's not easy. And so this number one issue, kind of, that's the Vampirella we meet. She's not super confident. She doesn't know where her place in the world is. She's trying to just keep a babysitter so that she can go out and do her patrols. Meanwhile, maybe somebody is trying to kidnap her son, or maybe he's trying to protect her son. It's hard to say. And also that same person goes to Vampirella's old therapist, who's Christopher Priest's insert character, to complain about Vampirella, and the therapist is like, oh, hell no. It's interesting enough. I do really like the art, and it seems like there's enough affection for Vampirella here that it doesn't feel down punching. But as soon as we start down punching, I'm probably not going to drop it because I'm on my Vampirella bullshit. Okay, now we come to Weapon X-Men. You know what? This is just X-Force. This is just X-Force done relatively well as X-Force. The art from Chris Cross is good. The writing from Joe Casey is fine. I will say it's a little expository. It really is like Deadpool just listening to Baron von Strucker monologue to him for a whole issue. So fine, I guess. But it's interesting because it feels X-Forcey. The other half of the plot is just Cable finding a blackbird. Like there's literally 8 pages of like Cable being like, run, run, run. We found the blackbird. They get in the blackbird. Then they crash the blackbird. That wasn't really a plot. And I guess I've got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder just from reading Joe Casey's Blood Squad 7 right now, which nothing has happened in 7 issues, that I'm like, is anything going to happen? Is this just what this book is going to be? Is it just going to be monologuing from the villain and then a blackbird crashes and then the issue is over? But at the same time, this feels like it has the DNA of a good X-Force book. Like Joe Casey writes Deadpool like Joe Kelly wrote Deadpool. He's a very funny Deadpool. I think it's funny because we're about to see a bad villain get their bloody comeuppance, which is about what X-Force is often about. I need to read one more issue to know if Joe Casey's got a good vibe here or if it's just going to be a flop. Next, we come to maybe my favorite book of the week after Absolute Manhunter. Maybe I might like it more than Absolute Martian Manhunter. And that is We're Taking Everyone Down With Us by Matthew Rosenberg, Stefano Landini on art, colors from Roman Titov and Jason Wordie, letters from Hassan Otsman Elhal. This had so many layers, and I loved every layer. It starts with this little girl who's being babysat by robots. Why is she being babysat by robots? First of all, the colors. Roman Titov, Jason Wordie, killing it. Killing it. Love the fantastical pinks and purples, and then the cast of colors, but then how she is shaded by that. So she's in like blues and greens because we're playing with like the light in this forest at dusk. The colors throughout this book, fantastic. The letters throughout this book, fantastic. Really fun playing with like these semi-organic word balloons from the robots, but that are still kind of robotic. And then just like letters right on the background when it is possible, but then putting them in a word balloon when we need it. But we got to talk about Matthew Rosenberg's story here. This little girl is the daughter of a mad scientist, but aren't we all? I mean, think about looking at your parents when you were like 9 years old or 11 years old. Did you fully understand who they were as people? If they were good or they were bad in the way that you know them now, did you understand their full goodness or badness as people? Or were they just your parents? And when they said, I'm busy with work, I can't play hide and seek, so you have to choose hide or seek, which is the funniest thing in this issue. Sorry to spoil it. Were you angry that they were working? Did you realize they were working because they were a doctor or a lawyer or a person who takes out the trash or somebody who cleans buildings and somebody whose job was making a difference for other people in some way? Or did you just think they're busy, right? And so this has that. And it also has a totally drunk on Quaaludes James Bond who probably needs to go kill the super scientist if they can sober him up fast enough. So smart. I loved everything about it. I loved how we were inside of a villain's world, but with a relatable protagonist. So we had to see the villain as a protagonist. To me, it wasn't making this reference, but I feel like I was watching the cartoon Inspector Gadget, except for I was watching the bad guy version of Inspector Gadget. I loved this. I loved everywhere that it could go. I think it made a great one-shot issue. It was 40 pages long. You could just read this as one shot. It was very satisfying, which makes for a great number one, but I'm also desperate to know what happens to these characters, which is the right way to do things. I don't read Wolverine Revenge. It was out of continuity, and we know how I am. I don't read Wonder Woman because it's by Tom King, but much like Daredevil, trend alert, Wonder Woman is just wrapping up a first arc here with issue 19. I am maybe going to start reading again with issue 20 because it's not going to be this one long lugubrious arc, and there are some artists I really like to support who are going to be on it starting with issue number 20, even though I love Daniel Sampier, but it's not enough to keep me reading Tom King, so we'll see. I might dip in and out for the next couple of months. I don't know if I have enough of a voice or enough energy. Okay. Okay, here we go. X-Manhunt number 1. If you don't have anything interesting to say about X-Men, maybe don't take the job. Don't write the X-Men comic books. Don't edit the X-Men comic book. Maybe it would be better if we just didn't have X-Men comic books for a year. This had one good idea. 2, I'll even give it 3 good ideas. The idea is that Xavier just can't be on Earth anymore. He's got too much baggage as a character. Hickman wants him in space. Let's send him off. And it also has another good idea that Scott can't let go. He's too tied up with Xavier as his father. He's too tied up with what Xavier has done as part of the fall of the House of X. He's too tied up with the idea that if the world doesn't have Xavier to hate, the hate is going to be spread out around all other mutants. That all works. And the action with magic works a lot. The art, I could take or leave. I don't think it was that great. What doesn't really work is that the way the teams are fighting about this, Storm shooting Cyclops with an interatlantic lightning arrow, whatever the big kaiju fight was with teleportation too, didn't really make a lot of sense. Then Xavier has emergency brain surgery, which takes about 30 seconds, but then after the brain surgery is over, none of it made sense. 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 It didn't make sense. Part of my problem was that it didn't make sense. And it gets into that these characters love each other, but they have also Wolverine just stabs Cyclops, and then that's it. It's like, oh, you're stabbed, and then he's later, sorry, I stabbed you a little. Like, it has the right idea that these characters will always care about each other, even when they're on opposite sides. And I do think that was the appropriate thread to hit. But the problem is that none of these stories are good. So we're being told that like X-Men are family, X-Men are forever, and then we're reading stories that like aren't interesting, don't feel motivated. They're just bad. I don't know what to tell you. It's bad. It was a bad comic book. It was bad. Speaking of, you'll do bad things. That's what I think about the X-Men writing team every month. I say, you'll do bad things. And then they do. But this is a different comic book. It's not about Gail Simone. It's about this horror writer who wrote this really great horror comic book that everybody loved 10 years ago. And now every time he starts to try writing like a ooh cute romance book, it turns into a horror book instead. I'll say this. Love this concept. I really love the colors from Courtney Menard, who kind of like played with everything being a different cast. Like, look at this panel where like the woman in the foreground is orange, the wall is yellow, the other wall is purple. It didn't do that all the way through the issue, but it did it really effectively. I really, really loved it, on top of art from Adrio Tertolucci. But yeah, I really loved it. But there was this sequence in the middle of this book that's just this kid doing a magic act for the two people, and it just ground the issue to a halt. I'm sure it's going to be significant later, and it's going to have to do with the way this guy thinks about the world, doing a magic trick. But it just stopped the issue flat. And then this issue wasn't a 40 issue. First issue was like 22 or 27 pages. So it wasn't a 40-page issue. So I feel like just as I was starting to see the appeal of the fact that this guy's unwittingly writing murderous romances that he's making happen in the real world, it kind of just ends. And I just think that I don't know if we got enough conceptually in the page span that we got to make this interesting enough to keep reading. I probably will, because I like Tyler Boss and I love the art style here, but I think story-wise, it was a critical error to not make this an oversized first issue. I think it would have benefited from being an oversized first issue. And then I don't read Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and we are out. Okay, so let's go back for some comments, and then we'll see if I have enough of a voice to play a song. The seasons. Everything goes badly for spring, and a little more is added to the mystery. Bunkmaster B, genitals waggling in the wind. What a sentence. Yeah, well, when you're talking about Savage Dragon, you say some sentences nobody's ever heard in the world before. Season number 3, I'm enjoying it, but I've seen the storyline done so many times. One character sees something yeah, that's the thing. The whole, like, you're making it up, little girl. I'm not listening to you. Like, I just feel like there's better ways to do that, and I'm kind of like, are we serious? Are we really doing this right now? I kind of is what I felt like. Like, is this what this whole issue is going to be about? Like the sister not believing her younger sister. And I guess for that reason, I kind of just got annoyed. Comic book covering right hand just saved us from canceled crisis. Oh, because I mistakenly saluted, which I was not trying to do, under the comic book on the right. That's the last we shall speak about that. Ryan Wilson remembers watching a video about Rick Remender's tropes, and he does a lot of sins of the father and not growing up to be like their father tropes in his stories. Yeah, and I feel like finally we're out from under that in an interesting way right now, which is maybe why he's starting to appeal to me. Bung has to be, I continue to be delighted by the seasons, but I'm a sucker for a deconstructed story. Can't wait to reread this once the inevitable hardcover comes out. Feel like it will read very differently. Matt H, the texture and the art of Solomon Kane looks crazy. I haven't read it, but the art, if you are a Patrick Zurcher art lover, it is absolutely worth it just for the Patrick Zurcher art. The art is really, really great. Pity Ma, I haven't been able to pick up my issue of Solomon Kane. Oh boy. Well, if you were like already, my battery died. Well, let's hope we're in tune. But that means I'm not gonna be able to play through my app. Yeah, if you already like Solomon Kane, then I think you're already really gonna like it. Stoops, it was his least favorite Superman issue for a while. I would agree. I like good or anti-hero Lex, says Ryan Wilson. I agree with that as well. We all know how I feel about a train job. Stoop likes the Star Trek book. Kane just loves Ultimate Spider-Man. Channeling some Starship with I Built the City. Ryan Wilson, I feel like Ultimate Spider-Man and all these Ultimate series are temporary. They'll reset everything. Well, I think the whole point is Hickman built a universe that can move on. The problem with Krakoa, it was built in a way that people were reading it like typical Krakoa X-Men. And they just wanted to keep going. And Hickman was like, no, we're going to do big changes. And people were like, not so much. So he built this to be able to happen. Superjob just finished the Harley Quinn Fartacular and agree with me. It was funny, but as a Dutchman, I'm already found also really funny. Yeah, it did take the piss, or shall we say the toots, out of the Dutch a little bit. When I mentioned Comfort Care X-Men, are you referring to Krakoa post Hickman X-Men? I mean, during Krakoa, when everybody kind of fell in love with Krakoa, and they're like, I love Pirate Kitty. I love, Betsy as Captain Britain. People wanted to just like sit with the thing that they loved, and Hickman wanted to like move fast and break stuff. And I think what he discovered is that Marvel, the sales were strong enough that he was disincented from moving fast. And he was like, as Hickman, I can't sell enough comic books to make my presence justified if we're going to try to make this run for 5 years. Like, I think he had a much quicker plan. I think they eventually got there. Everything we've read about Krakoa in any kind of oral history of it really seems like we eventually got to the end of what Hickman was going to do. But I think the implication is there was maybe going to be like a second and third act even past that we never even got to. So Comfort Core X-Men for me is like when the fans are really like, oh, but I love this. And like, we can't move forward. Hickman wanted to like move faster and break more stuff. Yeah, Ultimate Wolverine 2 was kind of like promised that we were going to like learn more about his relationship to Colossus and Magic, but like then they fought the whole issue. Yeah. Universal Monsters, The Mummy. Art did an excellent job, make you feel like Egypt. I do agree with that. I do love a good Egypt and Mummy story. Stoops says the Ultimate line has a lot of lost hype for me, except the Ultimates book. Same with DC, absolute, except for Wonder Woman. Yeah, I would agree with that too, a little bit. James Abel, Ultimate Wolverine, beautiful movement and the artwork and the ending with Kitty and Logan. Yeah, that did leave me with some questions. Stoop is really liking all of Universal Monsters. Ryan Wilson, I wonder if Gail Simone has even read Claremont's. I think she's read it. I think she's aware of it. I think she's very reverent to a lot of Claremont X-Men. I just don't like the direction she's taking of it. Thoughts of the announced Priest Quesada book. I forget what got announced. I forgot. It's something. Is it? It's something. I don't remember. I'm sorry. One Wheel Tracks, Ultimate Wolverine. I feel like this interaction with Kitty will lead us to some answers and implications that these X characters knew. Logan had me intrigued. Cruel Angel, we're taking everyone down. Lots of workaholic followers neglecting their families this month. Absolute Flash and Martian Manhunter too. I'm intrigued enough to see where the story goes next. James Abel said some interesting ideas. Some pages had way too many panels on them. I do think Anna might be half cyborg. Here's One Wheel Tracks with the comment on Uncanny. Maybe a little better. At least appreciated Simone trying to explain why Rogue was acting so harsh, and the previous interview to Jitter. Matt H, nothing but monologuing from a villain sounds like current times in our society. You're not wrong. Stoops, I always wait a few issues before I read a new ID series. Or do you mean indie? Yeah. I think them doing double-sized first issues kind of accounts for that. Like, they know that people won't always stick around past number ones. They've squeezed 2 and 3 issues worth of stuff into the number one, so it really sells you the story. And I think, honestly, it works. This was my preferred title of the 2 Rosenberg boss books this week. Loved the book. The person in line in front of me hadn't read it yet. I had to listen to me rave about it. Says Bunk Master B. Agree on we only have time for hide or seek line from the dad. Yeah, that fucking killed me. James Abel talking about Wonder Woman. Tom King finally ended the plot. He started back in Wonder Woman 800 and he made a new one that people probably are going to hate even more. Oh, Lord. Okay. Well, you do that things had such a great use of complementary colors. I agree. So many great yellow, purple, orange, blue panels that popped. That one does look interesting to me. Stoop says, I'll check it out after a few issues are out. Gadim says, I don't hate Tom King and I love Sam Pierce's art, Diana, but the writing is just lackluster and it feels like a waste of the art. I would agree. And here's Reaper, my Australian friend. Thanks so much for the time and passion I put into your hobbies. You're very welcome. I appreciate everything I do and everything I share. So here's the thing. There's a battery in my guitar that makes it run on the amp. And the battery may have just run out, which means I'm not going to be able to play through my amp this Martian Manhunter song. I can get a battery, but it's going to involve me running away for 60 seconds. So you know what? We're going to try something new that I've been thinking about. I know we're right at the 3-hour mark, but I'm in 10. So I'm putting up this banner called No Wrong Answers. This is a new game I want to play with you sometimes. I'm going to ask a question and there's no wrong answers. You can say whatever you want. So for me, what is a character you have nostalgia for? Could be nostalgia from last week. It could be a character you never read as a kid, but now gives you warm, fuzzy feelings. Or you could have nostalgia from them from when you were a kid. You have 60 seconds to answer because I have to run to where I have a spare 9-volt battery in my house. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be back very soon. I'll be back very soon. Okay, I'm back. I'm sure you're gonna appreciate that sprint through the house so much when I have to sing in a minute. Okay. So we have Lance McNair saying Spider-Man is his nostalgia, no wrong answer. AS saying Ms. Blix. I never know how to say that. For Cruel Angel, oh my gosh, I'm so out of breath. It's Rom's Space Knight. For Uva, it's Deathlock and Shang-Chi. For Pity Ma, Superman, always. For Reaper, it's Silver Surfer. For Superjob, it's X-Force. I'm one of those liked Rob Liefeld guys. For Bunk, it's The Question. I will always buy a question book, no matter how much I dislike it. I'm looking at you all along the Watchtower. Planet 628, I don't think I've said hello to you yet. Darkhawk and Jewish Dragons, Rocky and Bullwinkle. Awesome. Okay, so I've made it to the end of the comments. Okay, I've made it to the end of the No Wrong Answers. We're going to play that. That's something I've been thinking about for some of my other streams. And I have some more ways that I'm going to use that, but we got a little unplanned version of it here. So I'm going to try to play this Martian Manhunter song. I have not done this kind of thing on the internet for, I want to say 20 years, maybe, where I wrote a song. I literally wrote this when I read the book. I think I read it on Thursday. Then I put it down because I wasn't sure I was going to get anywhere with it. Not the book, the song. And then I picked the song back up last night because I didn't want to, sometimes it's good to let a song just sit, I find. But sometimes if I let it sit too long, I lose the thing that was like magnetic to me about it to begin with. So I need to like remember it while it's fresh to a degree. So then I opened it back up last night and I was like, there's something to this, but I couldn't make the bridge work. So I kept working on the bridge and I was talking to Max about the chords and the key it was in. And I was like, I just can't make it work. I'm going to go to bed. So I went to bed and I woke up first thing and first thing I had the melody of the bridge and it just worked. Now, do I remember? I was really not a man. I could fly away to, okay. So this may not work. It's literally, I only recorded it once this morning so I could like remember what it sounded like. This will be my second time ever playing the song, but it's called Absolute Man. And it is based on, as you will know, if you've read the book and you listen to the lyrics, the first issue of Martian Manhunter. Oh gosh, this makes me so nervous. Usually I work on songs for years before I play them for anybody. Okay. I breathe your thoughts in like smoke, and they cloud my mind. I feel like I might explode in this coffee shop this morning. What have I got to hide in my secret inner life? I assume everyone's got one. Are they as colorful as mine? I don't know who I am. I'm absolutely not a man. And I wonder if I might like me better if there were life on Mars. But until then, I am what I am. Absolutely not a man. We're at the kitchen counter, talking, and I'm losing my mind. I see the colors of life, but it's just you chopping onions. I think our routines are lies, as if we control anything, as if any of us are what we seem. I don't know who I am. I'm absolutely not a man. And I wonder if I might like me better if there was life on Mars. But until then, I am what I am. Absolutely not a man. I could fly away today and pretend that I obey the gravity that binds us. And I've been lying to you for months, but you're not the only one. I breathe my thoughts out like smoke, but they don't form words. I can't seem to fill the space between us. I tried to describe what I am, but my mind comes up blank. Maybe they don't have the words yet, or maybe I refuse to learn them. I don't know what I am. I'm absolutely not a man. And I wonder if I might like me better if there was life on Mars. But until then, I am what I am. I'm absolutely not a man. I'm absolutely not a man. Am I Martian or a man? I gotta know just what I am. Absolutely not a man. Well, there's the second time, for real, that I've ever played that song called Absolute Man, and it is based on Absolute Martian Manhunter, written by Dennis Camp and art from Javier Rodriguez. Thank you for humoring me and doing a thing that I've said I was going to do on the internet for over 13 years, which is write songs about brand new comics. So I have been Krisis. This has been absolutely delightful. We almost brought it in under 3 hours, but then I had to run and get the battery. It was a whole thing. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to be all over the Near Mint Condition channel this week. We're going to be talking about all of the Marvel omnibuses that are going to be out this year to the end of the year tomorrow. Then the next day, we're going to talk about the DC catalog. And then Friday for me, Thursday for you, is going to be Marvel Solicits. So please be tuned in to Near Mint Condition. Thank you so much for watching this. Whether you watch it live or you watch it in retrospect, I do go back through and read all of your chats and I read all the comments, although I think I got most of the chats live today. So I appreciate you all so much. Be well in this world. It is a challenging world to be in. So if you're not sure what you are, you're not sure what to do, that is okay. Not everybody has it figured out. As long as you're treating yourself well and you're treating other people well as yourself, then I think we might just make it. So hang in there, everybody. I will see you all this week on Near Mint Condition. I'll see you next week, and let's do it. Oh gosh, I thought that was going to be the end, but it's good I didn't like that line. Which I didn't need a closing line. I could be like, crush it, because you're the crushers. I just don't know. I would say, I've been Krisis, so don't have a crisis unless it's me. That was good.